Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to Arizona Western College and the Arizona State Board of Education retreat. Super happy that we've got a number of presentations today. One that I'm super excited about by our premier partners at Yuma Union High School District that will highlight a little bit of the magic that's occurring here in Yuma. But with that, I would ask Director Ross to take roll as I call this meeting to order at 9:07.
So President Corr, Vice President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Catanese here, and Member Clark is not with us. Dr. Clay
here.
Dr. Hagerman
Here.
Member Kravickas, Member Meyerson, and Dr. Robbins is not with us. Dr. Corr, you have a quorum.
Fantastic, thank you. Then I'll just move us on to item 1 there, which is the Executive Director's Report, kind of an overview of the day today.
Dr. Corr, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, we are super excited for today's retreat, and I just want to thank Arizona Western College again for being amazing hosts and really going above and beyond. And I just have to let you know, Dr. Corr, every time we thank a member of your staff for something, they literally say, "No, that's what we do at Arizona Western College." So just phenomenal. Yeah.
Thank you.
So just a brief overview of today's retreat. It's sort of split into 2 halves. The first half is going to be 3 presentations that are aligned to strategic priorities the board has identified. Up first, we are going to look at teacher recruitment and retention, and we're having a presentation by Teach for America, who's had some real success in that space, and we're very thankful for them coming to Yuma to present. Then we are going to move to another strategic priority, which is college matriculation and attainment. We will hear from Yuma Union and in particular San Luis High School, which is having incredible success with FAFSA completion and college matriculation with their students. And then the final presentation will be from Arizona Western College, talking about their success in dual enrollment and other programs as well, again, in that college matriculation space. That'll be the first half of the retreat. The second half will be board business. We'll have a quick presentation on the budget, and then the majority of the meeting will go towards generating strategic priorities for the year, aligning those with the legislative priorities for the year, and then further aligning those with the research agenda for the year to make sure that the board staff, and the public all have a sense of where the board would like to go in the next year. And well, to quote Dr. Clay, we're all pointed westward. And so yeah, I'm really excited. And so this is the retreat, and then just again a quick reminder if anybody needs those water and things out back in that other room. So that's it.
Fantastic. Then let's go ahead and jump right into this. Our first presentation will in fact be educator recruitment and retention, a Teach for America presentation. And as with all these presentations, it's information only. There'll be no vote taken, but very excited to ask Steve Erickson and Lauren Arnett to come and chat with us. So welcome, and the floor is yours.
Good right here?
Yeah, absolutely. If it works for you.
Okay.
You bet.
Great. Folks virtually can hear us. All right. Well, thank you so much for having us. It's an honor and really appreciative of all your service. The bias is on, but it's really important to us. The majority of the issues that we're all on the solve is decided. So here. We are going to do, we can keep going through the slides, but just really quick, Steve Erickson, the Executive Director of Teach for America, Lauren Arndt, our Senior Managing Director, overseeing all of our public affairs and development work. She oversees our growth work as well, both recruitment and retention. You're both former core members, so we're alumni of the program. I did the program in Arizona in 2005, taught 4th grade, 7th grade. Probably like a lot of Teach for America core members, thought it was going to be a 2-year stop to my preconceived notion of career plans. And I've been here ever since, over 15 years later. And Lauren, you want to just give a little bit of your
Yeah, absolutely. Lauren Arndt. I also started as a core member with Teach for America America, I taught as a 2010 New York City Corps member. I ended up teaching for 5 years, and I spent the rest of my time on staff.
Okay, so we'll spend time today doing just a flyover, whether you're familiar with Teach for America or not at all familiar, just an overview of who we are, what we do, and then we'll specifically try to get in. Sean asked us to talk a little bit about some of our teacher recruitment and retention success over recent years, so we'll get into that. But just to start, we can keep moving on the slides. So we're a national nonprofit. We serve over 50 communities across the country, urban and rural, and we've been in Arizona since 1994, serving the greater Phoenix community through our core program. And we really see ourselves as the premier talent provider, specifically in education for low-income communities. So we do this starting out through a 2-year teacher commitment. It's called our core member program, if you hear us talking about core members. And then we invest a lot in rigorously developing, training, supporting those teachers, both to aim at student outcomes and effectiveness, but also teacher retention. We want this to be a really great and successful experience for our teachers so that this is something they can see themselves committing to for their careers, which we end up seeing as alumni matriculate into the post-core member part of their career. So after that initial 2-year commitment, we see the vast majority. So here in Arizona, it's about 80% of our alumni who successfully completed that initial 2-year program continue to commit their careers in education or directly working in low-income communities. So we deliver impact through 3 primary products, we would call them. So one is that core member program that I talked about, bringing beginning teachers, and for the most part, these are folks early on in their careers or at the very beginning of their careers. The vast majority of our recruitment happens on undergraduate colleges and universities. They start their teaching career for a couple of years, and then we also have a large number of alumni, tens of thousands across the country. We have a little over 1,000 alumni living and working full-time across the state of Arizona. And then recently, Lauren's going to talk later about a new program that we actually piloted here in Arizona called the Ignite Tutoring Fellowship 3 years ago at the onset of the pandemic, and it has since scaled across the country. So we'll share a little bit about that, not only because it's been an innovative program that's really helped accelerate student achievement, but also because it's become a helpful runway for recruitment into our core program as well.
To interrupt, Steve, board members, Dr. Corr, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, we had a slight change to the slide deck this morning, so there's one slide. I think this slide was different, and so if you're having trouble finding the slide we're on, it should pick back up.
And we took one out.
Was it that obvious, Sean, that I was confused by all of this? Thank you.
That was my fault.
Attention.
That was my fault. Thanks, John. So there are clearly some challenges that we face in education, particularly on the teacher pipeline front. We've all looked at this, we're all familiar with this. This is sort of how we view it from a Teach for America vantage point. One is we are seeing significant and troubling academic declines. There's lots of evidence for this. I think NAEP is the most recent sort of comprehensive report on the concerning decline in academic outcomes for students. We also see, we're all familiar, I think we're acutely familiar here in Arizona with talent shortages. Last year, a quarter of teaching positions in our state remained vacant throughout the school year, big concern. And then we've been seeing, particularly since the pandemic, a lot of research and data on student wellness and mental health. So a lot of evidence that kids just aren't enjoying school right now and really having mental health challenges in school. So it's in some ways a new challenge that a lot of our teachers are taking on, or at least the scale that they're starting to face this with. But we do remain optimistic at Teach for America about the future. Our business, I said earlier, has always been about talent. So our core capabilities are finding amazing people, convincing them to dedicate their careers to education, developing them rigorously as educators, and matching them up in low-income communities where we think that they can have the biggest impact. And it's what we remain focused on even in the midst of these challenges. Right now, we really feel like we have scalable model where we are reducing the cost per teacher that we are bringing in and staying focused on student outcomes, wellness, and then also teacher recruitment and retention. And we're really excited about some of the innovations like Ignite that have emerged out of Teach for America, and really feel like innovation is going to be a really critical part of the future if we want to continue bringing in amazing educators and retaining them. Some of the lessons that we've learned, just observations over the, I will say 30 years of recruiting and trying to retain teachers, but in particular over the last few years with the emergence of Gen Z, with the onset of the pandemic, here are some of the more recent acute observations we've made. So these are, and I'd say in some ways, like headwinds and challenges as we look at teacher recruitment. One has been mental health. We've talked about the data coming out for like students and what they're reporting in school, but we also see this with adults. So we see a lot of our candidate pool expressing concerns around mental health. One data point that helped us uncover this is we found for the first time ever, and we have a really selective program. In a typical year, between 10 and 20% of our applicants get accepted, get an offer to join Teach for America. So typically people who are applying to our program, and particularly getting to the final interview stage of our program, that final selection stage, usually are pretty responsive, pretty responsible, showing up really well. We noticed in the last couple of years, our biggest drop off in the recruitment and application process was in that final interview. So people would make it through a couple rounds of our selection process and then just not show up to our final interview. No email, no phone call, not letting us know. So when we would reach back out to these folks and ask what it was, one of the most common reasons cited was mental health. So that's one important data point that we look at. Wow, this really is a big concern for this upcoming generation. Financial concerns has also been a huge thing. When we poll all of our candidates and ask them what they're looking for in a full-time job, many of them say they expect their starting salary to be between $60,000 and $79,000 a year. So that's sort of like sector agnostic, and you have to remember we're recruiting folks that might not necessarily be thinking about education as their preconceived career path. So they're just thinking about the job market in general. And as an education system, we are competing with the job market in general, and that's one of the things that they say. And so it's a hard figure to compete with when you look at average teacher salaries in Arizona right now, and really all over the country. School hiring timelines have been a challenge as well. We're recruiting, like I said, many of our teachers are coming directly out of undergrad institutions, and then they have a full summer to wait, right? In Arizona, most of them are graduating in May, and then they don't get their first paycheck until the second, third week in August. So they have this whole summer that they have to bridge financially and able to get started. Even if they're passionate, they're committed, they're ready to go, that hiring timeline has been challenged. And then the final thing is just job design. As we've seen other industries respond and flex to working from home, flexible work, virtual work, remote work, it's just something that like structurally within the school system it's harder to do. So just some of like the design of going to work and being on the job in the teaching profession hasn't necessarily lined up with the expectations of the upcoming generation. So that's the challenging news. We have seen, in spite of all of that, some recent success at Teach for America. So nationally, we are actually on track. Not every community we're in has started the school year, so we really tracked the first day of school to see who shows up. But we're tracking to see growth by close to 40% across the country. In Phoenix, in Arizona, we actually grew our incoming teacher cohort by 50% from last year to this year. And then we've also seen incredible retention over the last several years. So if you average it out, it's about 95% of our teachers we've retained since the start of the pandemic. If you look at a given year, it's somewhere between 90 and 98% for each of those years. And that's about 230 teachers that we brought in since 2020. So we are seeing some progress in the recruitment front despite some of these challenges. So we'll look at what we think has led to that. So one thing is just a strategic shift towards locally rooted recruitment campaigns. For decades, Teach for America, really like the bread and butter of our organization has been our ability to very rigorously and aggressively recruit. And we've done a lot of that centrally. So we have a recruitment team that deploys to universities and colleges all across the country. And we've had a pretty standardized model across all of those different institutions in terms of how we recruit people into our work. What we found with this current generation, this upcoming generation, is they're really interested in contextualized, locally rooted stories. And so we've started campaigning and recruiting around what's happening here in Arizona. And we found that that's helped change preferences. So one of the things that's most contributed to that 50% growth I mentioned earlier is we were previously one of the lowest ranked regions. When our candidates apply to Teach for America, they're not applying to a specific region, they're just applying to Teach for America, and then they choose where they go from there. We've seen the number in terms of like people who preference Arizona as a top choice, that grew by about 5x once we started this locally rooted campaign. So local context seems to really matter for this upcoming. We redesigned our admissions process, so we made it much more streamlined. When we looked out at the field, when we looked outside of education, in particular, we saw that interview and candidate processes were much shorter than what we were asking of our candidates and much more streamlined. So we've tried to leverage technology. We started that process and we want to get even more efficient on that end, but redesigning our admissions process while still, and the reason why it's going to take some time is because we want to maintain our bar for selection and for who we're looking for in candidates. We don't want to lower our bar for selectivity, but we want to make it more efficient. We want to make it an easier experience. We've also, and we've really had to go to private philanthropy for this, but we've invested more in upfront costs. I talked about that lag time between getting recruited, finishing your college experience, and starting the school year. Through private philanthropy, mostly outside of Arizona, actually, we've been able to offer all of our teachers a $5,000 signing bonus when they accept their offer during the summer to Teach for America. If they show some form of financial need, if they're on a Pell Grant, if they have DACA status, we offer them $10,000 signing bonus. So we actually double that amount. And frankly, we've seen in many cases it's still not enough to make that full bridge across the summer when you think about particularly housing costs to make the transition, but that has helped. We tried to create, and this is sort of connected to the local recruitment campaigns I talked about above, but we tried to just create stronger integration across the whole system, being a national organization and a national network. We found that our candidates were getting passed around to lots of different people throughout the process, and we've really tried to focus the experience to be more on like through their eyes, what would be the easiest experience for them. Part of that is just into further integration across our teams. And then the final thing is we're trying to reach down earlier. So not talking to people when they're at the end of their junior year, beginning of their senior year, but really saying, okay, who are the freshmen and sophomores who already are starting to build promising track records that we think could get invested in the work of education early? We have an unflinching commitment and really like a bet on young people. We always have at Teach for America. That's who we're looking to recruit. And so many of our competitors, employer competitors, really have found ways to engage lower down in the underclass experience. And so, they've been able to offer more lucrative internship opportunities than we have. But we've looked at things like the Ignite program as an example, and again, Lauren's going to talk about this in a minute, as ways to bring them into the education system and let them get a taste of it before deciding what they're ultimately going to do when they start thinking about those things in the junior year. And all of these shifts have been informed by a deeper understanding of Gen Z. This slide, we don't have to like read through. I mean, you can in your packets if you want. But I think this is just like a good health barometer for recruitment right now when we see people proactively and publicly going on social media and saying, I'm having this incredible experience, and they're articulating the experience in the way that we would want them to. Like, we feel like this is a very accurate representation of how we would want our candidates to be experiencing our program. So you can go back and read through this slide. Okay.
So Steve mentioned a few minutes ago our Ignite program, which we launched in the fall of 2020 as a response to the pandemic and virtual learning. It started in Phoenix with about 100 tutors that school year, and we really weren't sure where it was going to go beyond just that initial school year, but it ended up being really successful. And we heard from the school leaders who we were working with that students who had been in need of academic intervention for a long time were testing out of those interventions as a result of the high dosage tutoring that they were getting through our Ignite program. And the tutoring that is offered through the Ignite program is based on Brown University's high dosage tutoring research. And so we've scaled that program over the last 3 school years to 21 communities across the country. We continue to have Ignite tutoring fellows in Phoenix. This past school year, we had 220 fellows. So we grew from that initial 100 and impacted about 631 students. And we expect to have about the same footprint this year. Ignite is really beneficial in multiple ways. One, it's great for students and it supports teachers by giving them an additional lift in their classrooms. And so we're seeing that when we have campuses where our teachers are teaching and our fellows are tutoring, there's additional academic impact. It's also been a really great on-ramp to our core offering, our first and second year teachers. We recruit freshmen through seniors in college to be Ignite fellows. And last year, 51% of the fellows who were seniors and therefore eligible to become core members applied to the program. About 80% of those who applied ended up getting an offer, and then 80% who got an offer matriculated into our program. So that's about 4 times higher than just traditional. We've been excited to see the impact of that.
I think we can move pretty quickly through these last couple slides and just get to Q&A, but I apologize. But in the long term, we talked about the short, medium, and long-term impact of Teach for America. Again, our capabilities are all around talent. We know we have to partner with lots of organizations, institutions, schools, communities to move towards some of these larger milestones that we really care about. But over the long term, we are committed to doubling the number of students enrolling in high-quality post-secondary opportunities in the communities that we serve. We're going to do that by primarily being the talent provider, developer, matcher towards that goal. And we feel set up to do it. We hope to partner with all of you and whoever else wants to. And we appreciate the time today. Open to questions if you have time.
Thank you, Steve and Lauren. Any questions from?
I just had a quick question regarding Ignite. Did you end up providing a stipend to those individuals or a grant of some sort?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all of our Ignite tutoring fellows receive a stipend, about $1,200 for the semester. And then we also have trainers on each campus. So teachers on the schools know the students best, and they work with the fellows to ensure that the interventions that they're getting are targeted. And so those trainers also.
Fantastic. Any other questions or comments? Superintendent Horn?
So, where are you guys located?
Yeah, Superintendent Horn, thanks for the question. We serve the greater Phoenix community, so we partner with school districts, charter schools across the valley. So far east is Mesa, far west is Avondale, a lot of South Phoenix.
We're going to be putting some significant money into the tutoring program, so I'd like to benefit from your experience. Could you give me your contact?
Happy to. Thank you for asking.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well done. We appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Clark. Thank you, members of the board.
All right, now I've hyped these guys up, so they have a lot of pressure on them to deliver. I'm going to move us on to our third item on today's agenda: college matriculation and attainment, Yuma Union High School District presentation. Once again, I'll remind you for information only, and I know Principal Jankowski and Eric Patton will be presenting, but I also think we'll get a few words from the mighty Superintendent Tim Branza. So, Tim, it's all yours.
Thank you for the term mighty. That's never been an adjective used. But thank you, board. Thank you, President Core. Thank you, board, for allowing us. Superintendent Horn, thank you for returning to Yuma. I know Dr. Core and Superintendent Horn have actually been to San Luis High School, so we're pretty excited about that. We did not change the slide deck, but we changed presenters. So Eric Patton, I want to recognize our Chief Communications Officer. He's taking pictures. He has the difficult job of making us look good, but
There we go.
thank you, Eric, in advance. I would like to introduce our governing board because without them, what we talk about here today would not happen. They've been very supportive of every measure we have taken when it comes to academic success and making sure every student graduates college, career, community prepared. So we have our board president, David Lara, in the back, and we have round of applause for each of them. Our board vice president, Carlos Gonzalez, and we have our three other governing board members, Jacqueline Kravitz, and board member Christy Craddock, and board member Shelley Mellon. And like I said, without them, the magic wouldn't happen, but we actually have three really important people who actually do a very heavy lift in our district, and those are the associate superintendents who work with me, and I'm going to introduce them. They did not know that, but they're well prepared anyway. So we have Lisa Anderson, associate superintendent, Derek Bosch, and we have Diane Cordery. So without that amazing team, the information we talk about today would not be possible. With that, I'll get started. We have 7 amazing schools. So you're going to be hearing about San Luis High School, but this is replicated across all our schools. Our newest school, Somerton, just opened up this year with a freshman class, but I have to say that I know they'll be having the same data report here eventually as well. Geography of Yuma County that we serve, this is just our district, is 1.5 times the size of Rhode Island. So believe it or not, we spend about $2 million a year on busing students so they can get to their school safely and learn. So we have a huge area of land that we encompass, and every student comes to school prepared because of our transportation system. We sit around just under 11,000 students from last year. This year we're up around 11,300. So we have some growth, which is awesome. Our grad rate for last year is 89%. Dropout rate, we are very, very proud of as well, 2.14%. I'm not going to steal any thunder from Mr. Jankowski, so he'll report on his a little bit later, but it's much lower than 2.14% because we want to make sure every single student's accounted for and engaged in learning. Minority-wise, we're basically a Hispanic population, sitting around 89%. And one interesting fact about our school district, we have the largest migrant student population in the state of Arizona for the high school district that we are. Just over 2,000 students, and we engage them every day as well. We're very proud of our career and technical education programs. Anytime you have an opportunity to our schools, you'll find out that we have world-class material, machinery, so our kids are graduating with certification that is state and national tested, so they're prepared to go out in the workforce or work dream going to college or whatever their dreams may be. So just last year, we had 3,300 students, actually in 21-22, because we're still finishing up 22-23. But in 21-22, we had over 3,300 students receive industry certification. And once again, this is state and national test. This is not Yuma Union High School test to see. Also, our premier partner, which Dr. Kaur has mentioned already, and we are the premier partner, and I just want to put a plug out there for $25 of credit for dual enrollment. Our dual enrollment students, we had just under 2,000 last year that received a dual enrollment credit, and 92% of those that were enrolled there received a C or better. Amazing success, and it wouldn't be possible without our premier partner. And this is information that we do get from the Helios Center for Education Excellence, which is a database that's been developed over the last few years that provides us the real-time data to make decisions in our district and in our state. Just to give you an idea of some of the programs before I transition to Rob Jankowski, Principal Jankowski, who is the star of the show. Here are some of the programs we offer. This is updated as of this year. We did add a few new programs. We look at community needs, student interest, to see what viability we have for programming. And we do have another premier partner, which is our Southwest Technical Education District, STEADY, that helps with our programs on our campus as well. And we're very proud of that. With that said, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Jankowski.
Well, thank you again for having us here. You know, I'm not really the star of the show either at San Luis High School. It's definitely our students and our staff that take the spotlight. Just a little bit about San Luis High School. So our enrollment last year at the last day of school was 2,459. Again, due to that migrant population, we have a significant, or not significant amount, but several that come and go. And so right now we're at about 2598 is our student enrollment. Our geography is 2.4 miles away from the border, so we're definitely a border school. We have huge minority population, primarily Hispanic, 99.99%. Graduation rate this past year was at 92.95%. And as Mr. Brianza alluded to, our dropout rate was at 0.97%. So these are just some of the school goals that we try to shoot for every year, and we made them this past year as well. Again, looking at the Helios Center for Decision Making, pulling up some data, our graduating class from 2021, talking about the college matriculation rate, we had 562 graduates. Of those, 468 went on to college through partnerships like through AWC. A lot of them came over here. We did have several go attend some Arizona universities. So basically about 83% stayed in Arizona and went to an Arizona university. Now we still had some that went to out of state, and so really that college matriculation is even higher than 83%. So our students are challenged every day in the classroom. We have, as again Mr. Brianza stated, we have a high quality CTE educational programs with state-of-the-art, industry-ready supplies and materials and equipment that they can prepare themselves on and get ready to go right into a career if they're really interested in that. So in each CTE program, they have an industry credential, at least one, and so they can leave their high school career with something, a piece of paper that they can take to an employer that they know they reach a certain level of certification, and they know that they can reach something that could be an entry-level position for them without having to train and teach too much. Work-based learning, so we get them out in the community. We partner up with some businesses, and we get them some job shadowing and some hands-on experience as well, engaging the community. We challenge our students through advanced placement courses. We challenge our students through Cambridge curriculum. And that's across the board. Cambridge curriculums for every student that comes into Union High School District. We also supplement, gaps that we see. And so we have students who are interested in law and public safety. So they want to take forensic science, and we don't have a certified forensic science teacher on campus. So we reach out to ASU Digital Prep, and we fill that gap for our students. So really, a lot of what we offer at St. Louis High School is really driven by our students' course requests and what they want. We do offer 27 on-campus dual enrollment courses, mostly in our CTE classes, but we also have those college-level, entry-level English teacher on campus. We have an English 101, 102. We have a math teacher who's teaching college algebra and pre-calculus on campus. So that really helps with our dual enrollment numbers as well. Our students are showing that they're being prepared. Again, just more information from the Helios Center for Decision Making. They identified St. Louis High School as one of the top schools in the state for preparing students for post-secondary discipline of engineering. And basically what that means is the information that we got is that 100% of our students who enrolled in an English or an engineering 100 level course received the C or better. And this is just one success story. We had some students go on to a CTE competition at the state level where they took first place in robotics and urban search and rescue. And then they finished 6th nationally. And again, that really attributes to the passionate and dedicated teachers that we have, that also attribute to how they're supported in the classroom. They're supported through AVID strategies where the focus is writing, reading, collaboration, where students can have meaningful discussion in classes. They're organizing themselves, and they're looking at inquiring about, what else can they connect to. And then we have personalized competency-based learning. We have Canvas as a digital platform. So our students are well supported in the classroom. Our students our staff does a great job then supporting our community and preparing our students then to go on to college. So we have, for the past three out of the past 4 years, and the other year we were runner-up, but we have been the Arizona Board of Regents FAFSA MVP for the large schools. And so all that great work, again, couldn't be done with our staff that allow our counselors to come into our classrooms and talk to our students about college, talk to our students about the requirements for the FAFSA, hosting family nights. There's just one sample flyer that our counseling department put out there. come up with new and creative ways to get families to come onto campus to engage them, and then to get their students ready for post-secondary and the FAFSA. San Luis is a poor community. They were listed as one of the poorest communities in the state of Arizona, but through programs like this, through our counseling staff, through our migrant advisors, through our social workers, dropout prevention, we're able to definitely support our students and then prepare them for the next level. We also, through ASU, partnered up and informed our parents about what does it take to get onto the next level. So we hosted American Dream Academy, and we get through ASU. So I believe that's it. Again, we'd really like to thank, as Dr. Kaur mentioned before, the $25 an hour program to increase our dual enrollment numbers. I know they had other programs, cash back or cash in your pocket and stuff, and those numbers really helped our students, really those dual enrollment rates. You can take the QR code here. We are open. Any one of our campuses are open for visitations. We'll get you set up, and we'll show you all the great things happening in our schools and in our district. So, that's our Q&A.
Thank you, Principal Jankowski, Superintendent Brianza. Don't go too far. The college-going culture can't stress this enough, is extraordinary. Our friends at Education Board Arizona, got a study out this summer that showed somewhere around less than half of high school grads go on to higher ed, and it's even lower for Hispanic, 43%. I'm going to say off the top of my head. That's you're almost at double that. So that's the number. Tell us the why.
I think our students, they really see the value in education. And we push hard for that college going, right? Doing better for yourself, kind of living that American dream. And so through programs like AVID, college going is really one of the big pushes. AVID is advancement via individual determination, and that's the pursuit, is going on to college. And so we'll have things, like I said, like our counselors are out there doing the FAFSA. We have one day a week where we have college dress or attire wear, and so all our staff, we encourage all of our students every Thursday to come on campus, wear your ASU, U of A, AWC, whatever it is, your college gear. And so it's just the culture. There's pennants around campus. We're trying to put pennants and banners in every classroom about different colleges they can go to. So it really is a culture. We definitely benefit from having AWC right next door. So we are basically almost sharing a campus with the South County AWC branch, which then our students see that as their next step, and they see that as a very attainable next step to go to.
Thank you. I know Member Kervikas had a question, and I suspect some other members of the board will, but I think you chimed in first. Member Kervikas, can you hear me? If so, go ahead and ask your question.
I can. No, I'm fine. I didn't have a question.
And Superintendent Hagan, or Dr. Hagan.
I have a question.
I have another question kind of on the same line of where President Kaur was coming from. Has your data always looked this way? Or when it didn't and you made the move to where you're at now, what changes or what things did you do to get there?
Probably about 4 or 5 years ago, it started going a little bit higher. We had probably 5, 6 years ago a lot of turnover in teachers, turnover in administration. So it's hard to gain any traction with anything. Then we brought in the person that I replaced, really kind of established that college going culture. Mr. Lucky Arvizo, who's the current principal over at Somerton High School, and I've just really kind of just followed his footsteps. And so the past 3 years, 4 years, we've really seen that.
So when you brought the new staff in, was there mentoring? Was there things going on there that helped move things along?
Definitely. The AVID really helped. We brought in some instructional coaches, some full-time instructional coaches for our staff to get caught up to speed on some of the things we were doing, the reading, the writing, the inquiry, the teaching strategies. We would get a lot of teachers from, essentially not from a teacher preparedness course, they're coming from industry certification. So through programs like our onboarding, they would get caught up. Through AVID, they would learn some teaching strategies, some classroom management, and then some college going things that they can implement.
Okay. So about 10 to 12 years ago, we got rid of honors courses in our district. So students now don't take a class because of the weighted grade, they take it because of the interest they have in the subject matter, which I really think delves into why kids take classes. So that's why we've had so much success in the Leeson district-wide with students in CTE and dual enrollment courses, because that's what they want to take. They're not chasing the GPA. And just put a plug out there, Mr. Jankowski talked about retention. We used to have high turnover across the district, but especially in San Luis. But from last year to this year, we're at 84.8% of our teachers returned. So I think that's a huge win for Yuma County as well. But we talked about Teach for America and really appreciate the work we do. They do. They have some alumni working for us already, which is awesome. But without groups like Teach for America and just recruiting every single day, you wouldn't be at 84.8.
Yeah, the last time I was in Yuma, we visited San Luis High School. We were very, very impressed. There was a presentation by an engineering teacher that was especially a long presentation, had us captivated, really. At the Department of Education, we do a lot of analysis of data, and in your economic class, completely off the charts with respect to kids going to college. I think that has a lot to do with relationship with the community college. So a lot of the credit belongs to President Ford.
Oh, I'll stand up next and take my fair share of credit. Don't worry.
Thank you guys so much for your presentation. It's really impressive and an honor to be here and hear from you. Just to build on the question that Dr. Higerman asked, just for the mindset of the faculty, how did you go about getting individuals to be dual certified to teach the college level courses? Did individuals volunteer to go through that process, or is there incentive within the district? And then after that, I have a different question.
I think I can answer part of that. A lot of them, they came to me, and they kind of talked about, hey, I'm thinking about bringing some college level math classes on campus. And then we did the AWC, and they turn in the transcript and get their transcripts reviewed to see what level of math class they can teach up to. And really, it does benefit our students because now we can keep them on our campus without having to go to a separate campus and figure out transportation and all that stuff. Through our CTE programs, they're some industry experts. They've been in the industrial field for 10, 15 years, and now they're coming over to the education side. So they have that background where they're able to teach that college level course. And so we just recently added 2 more dual credit classes on campus, the American history and world history. So again, same thing. Teacher came up to me, I really want to kind of move to a dual credit. And so we switched his classes from advanced placement to now about dual credit. And so a lot of it has come basically from the grassroots. The teachers are coming up to me, coming up to administration and asking questions for it because they're hearing it from the students.
That's great. Thank you. Just to follow up on that, since you segued nicely into it, for the industry-related credentials, oftentimes there's a mismatch. A student might be interested in a particular credential, but there's not necessarily a job aligned with it. How do you all encourage strong certification that is aligned with actual in-demand jobs, or that through the process of stacking those credentials that would actually lead to employment?
We started something last year in the district, sort of that workforce alliance. So we're bringing in, businesses from the community to talk to our students, to tour our schools, to then, give them some opportunities to get out there into the workforce. And so our CTE classes and teachers do a great job explaining to them what are the careers available for their program. So they might be in a law and public safety class, and they're talking about border patrol, police officers, FBI, things like that. Or they might be in an engineering class that the defendant visited, and there might be like a robotics path they can take, it's a civil engineering path that they can take, electrical engineering, and our teachers do a great job teaching all the different areas, and then having students, giving them the choice to choose, I really like this bridge building project, I think I'm going to go into civil engineering, or this robotics, search and rescue that we did, I think I want to, focus a little more on robotics. And so our teachers do a great job differentiating for our students to see what they're interested in and offer them career opportunities.
Each CTE program has advisory boards made up by industry leaders and experts in the field, and they meet every year, twice a year, to give us feedback on what the students need and also update certification. So we do have almost 300 team members on our advisory board.
Dr. Core, sorry to interrupt. Just before Member Myerson goes, Dr. Clay needs to leave, and she did have a question, so she was wondering if she could jump ahead.
Oh, with your permission, Member Myerson. Dr. Clay, please go ahead.
Thank you, President Kaur. I have two questions. The first question is to move an educational ecosystem westward. It's all about culture and relationships. And so my question is, how would your relationship, explain your relationship with your secondary institution and yourself? Explain that relationship. And the reason why I'm asking this is because I have experiences with a lot of different schools in the state, and there's something missing. And the thing that's missing is the relationship between the two. Both will have very good ideas and doing great things for students, but sometimes they're siloed. So I want to know the secret of this sweet relationship that you have with your post-secondary partner, and any type of advice you can give. That's my first question. After that, I'll ask my second question, which is to Dr. Kaur.
So I'll take part of that. Maybe Dr. Clay, it's good to see you again. I met you in Houston at JFF, Jobs for the Future. So I invited you to Yuma. I'm still waiting for you to come. Not virtually, but you know, I know you're busy. I know you're busy, but standing invitation. So our relationship is, I think, one of, yeah, let's just figure out how to make it work. Dr. Kaur and his team, he has an amazing team at AWC. They have always been able to make it work for us. But it's just not AWC. We do have a strong relationship with NAU, and we have a strong relationship with ASU, who has a presence on our campus, and U of A. Yuma is very unique. We have all 3 state universities that actually run programs on our campus. It could be engineering, it could be help with early childhood education, but they all have a presence. But it's not about oh, we can't do that. It's like, well, let's think about how we can get it done. And every single time with and I'll just focus on AWC because that's where the primary amount of dual enrollment and opportunities come from. It's about finding a way to make it work, and money has never been a hindrance. I can tell you that right now. If students can't find the $25 per credit, something happens. Dr. Kaur calls it magic. I don't know what it's called, pixie dust, but something happens. But at the end of the day, I think having an open relationship and being open to making things work and trying something new is really where the magic's at. I don't know, Principal Jankowski, if you want to add to that, but I hope that helps.
Another question?
Were you going to speak again? Continue? Okay.
No, go ahead. If you have another question, and then I'll turn to Member Myerson for her question.
Okay, I do. All right. Well, comment. My new mantra for this year is make it work. Okay, so I just we have something in common. The other thing, it is about relationships. And again, I think that's what as a state, this is our challenge, to get these relationships going between secondary and post-secondary, where it's sweet, where there's a sweet spot there. So thank you, both organizations and all organizations in Yuma, for setting an example for how things should look. Okay, and my other question is for Dr. Kaur. How many schools in the county, how many school districts in the county are you particularly working with as post-secondary?
Sure. So we serve a 2-county district. Our by far largest partner is Yuma Union High School, but then to the north we serve Parker and Quartzsite, and then to the east Antelope School District. So we work with a number of high school districts, but by far by far, as well as private. You know, a local Catholic school, we have a very strong dual credit relationship. But by far, our largest partner is UniU. Again, I've said it 5 times, by far.
Thank you. Thank you for the model. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Member Meyerson?
Thank you so much for the presentation. 2 questions for you. So you talked a lot about the sort of vertical alignment from high school to college. Can you talk a little bit about the alignment between the high school system and the K-8 systems that feed into your high school system, and what that partnership looks like, how you're ensuring you're getting the best prepared as possible as they
As kind of even mentioned for the past couple minutes, it's all really about those relationships. And so our counseling, our administrative does a great job reaching out to those elementary districts and just getting some information. You know, hey, which one of your students are ready for some college level math classes? What are your SEI students that are going to need a little extra support? How can we transition, you know, special ed students from the middle school to the high school? So it really is just about, you know, pick up a phone call, send an email, hey, let's talk about this. How can we make it happen? So it's just that relationships that we've had. Again, the lower turnover we've had, and even the lower turnover at the elementary district has really kind of solidified those relationships, and now it just seems seamless. It's just almost like a process. It's kind of something that we just do now.
So I want to come and visit and see that. That sounds wonderful and beautiful.
We actually have 4 feeder districts, so we're the high school district, so we have Gadsden, we have Somerton, we have Crane, and we have District 1. And I think Crane Board President Marco Moore's here. He's here too, so Mr. Moore. Just call him out, but sorry, Mr. Moore, for calling you out. But we do have partnerships with all 4 of our feeder districts. Then we have parochial districts with private schools that feed into us as well. But there probably is more, but it looks and feels different for each one, because in Yuma, just like, you know, the rest of the state, it's not necessarily a unified district, and you have multiple feeding districts. So there's probably more, but you're welcome to come visit any
I
single
want
time.
to. Yeah, no, it sounds great. So second question for you. Again, sort of the high school graduation statistics are just incredible. How have you, or are you tracking college persistence? And so as you're sending kids to college, can you talk a little bit about that in terms of, are your kids getting there? Do they feel prepared? Other supports that you all have in place to ensure that they persist?
A lot of the information and data that we've gotten recently was from the Helios Decision Center of Educational Excellence, and so that's where we're starting to see some of those numbers, and like, they are kind of like a little bit off the charts, and that's really good. You know, it really shows that we're doing some good work. It kind of validates, you know, some things that are happening on our campus, and so. In the past, you know, we've maybe informally kind of reached out to some students, you know, hey, how's your freshman year go? Or, you know, what path are you interested in? But I think through that data center, we're able to really kind of track some of that more specifically.
Thank you both. Super impressive.
Dr. Kaur, I changed my mind. I do.
Member Catanese. I still thank you. Still impressive, but Member Catanese.
We can keep thanking them, so thank you. First off, this is like meeting celebrities, because we've spent a lot of time, a lot of us in this room, we're education nerds, and we've spent a lot of time in the Helios Decision Theater, and one of the first things that we look at is San Luis is sort of this example of what could be possible for all kids. And so I'm a Teach for America alumnus, so the presentation right before this, like really, at your high school, and honestly, a lot of schools here at Yuma really speak to what this is all about, right? That every child deserves an excellent education. And so I guess my first question is, do your students realize that they're rock stars? Like, do they realize that they are the example of what is possible for the state?
Yeah, some do. That definitely they go on to the state. A lot of our CT or some of our CT students will go on. They'll become state officers. They'll become national officers, and we'll bring back that information. Like, there are only 3 national officers in the whole state of Arizona, and San Luis High School has 2 of them. Or Yuma High has 1, or COFA has 1 or 2. And so just they're seeing that, you know, bigger picture through their other students, that, you know, this is a pretty special opportunity to be down here and enjoy kind of my high school career and the opportunities that are presented to them.
So I guess with that, I think transparency is so important, especially like when you're with kids, and if they have this huge celebration factor of, you know, this is what we are able to achieve. This is not necessarily what is normal, and it should be normal for every single high school. It should be normal for every single school in the state. How are you celebrating data? How are the students a part of the data conversations? And how do celebrations look like for this? Because I'm sure you guys are celebrating it. I'm sure the kids know that this is happening.
So when we first kind of started with the big FAFSA push, you know, the hardest part was getting parents to bring in their tax information, and they wanted to be very secretive of it, and they didn't want to bring it in. So once we kind of cleared that hurdle a little bit, then we started explaining to our families and our students just how much they're able to receive. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, you know, San Luis is more of a poor community, very migrant, you know, a lot of field workers, and so they see the FAFSA as a path to going on to college and receiving some financial aid. And so we do the best we can to, you know, share with them the numbers, but then also celebrate those, you know, the Arizona Board of Regents MVPs that we get, explain to them the college going rates that we've been able to attain, do, you know, some spirit days, or recognize some students through announcements that are achieving, you know, high success, whether it's national, state officer, their advanced placement school, you know, advanced placement, things like that. And so we do share that information out a lot on our campus. We take pride in our campus. Number one, just the visual aspect of it too. You know, I want students to come to a nice, clean campus, and, you know, I think they take pride in the campus, and they try and keep it clean as well. And, you know, they recognize the success of other students.
And I think they do take pride. I actually met a student yesterday in line for fries from San Luis. I started talking to a random student over here at AWC, and I asked him where he went to high school, and he said San Luis High School. And so immediately I got really excited, because we hear about your high school, and really I think the testament to what you guys are saying is that this is not really a top-down approach. This is a bottom-up approach. This is the students and the families and the community really being a part of this. And I think that if anything in our state is going to work with education and all of our students having access to the best available opportunities, it's going to start with what we're seeing right here. So this is a huge testament to your board, your staff, your teachers, your students, your families, your teachers, your leaders, everyone, and this happens together. So thank you for sharing this information with us.
Any other questions? Member Kravickas has a question. Oh, okay. Go ahead,
I changed my mind. I changed my mind, Dr. Core. I have a question. Actually, I have two for the principal at St. Louise. One is, I have the privilege of working with KnowledgeWorks for many years and was there when they started their work with you. I was wondering if you could share with the board a little bit about your journey on the personalized competency-based learning, and kind of what prompted you to start that and what it's looking like at your school.
Our journey with KnowledgeWorks kind of started with that personalized approach. You know, how can we differentiate for every student? But then also the shift from moving to, I guess, a standard grading system to more of a standards-based grading system. So now more of, instead of, you know, hey, you got 100%, but you got, you know, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. Now you're down to 70%. Now it's more of a standards-based approach. So okay, you're at a level 2. You're able to identify and recall these certain concepts. I need you to get up to a level 3, which is more proficient, and I need you to be able to go a little higher level thinking on it, being able to explain it, being able to compare and contrast with something, and then if you really want to go above, how can you extend that into, you know, possibly a level 4? So that was the kind of the first approach. Getting our teachers and our CT members, I mentioned a little bit earlier, in an engineering class, they're able to offer choice on students whether they want to specialize in civil engineering, electrical engineering, robotics. They can go to a stagecraft class where they can build sets, or they can work on sound, or they can work on lighting, or they have the choice and options to, you know, I can take a math, you know, math analysis class, or I can take a math 150, college algebra, or pre-calculus class. And so just that whole mindset of giving students a lot of options, and then really gets built by the students. And so through our course requests, we can see how many sections we need to offer. So sometimes it'd be a difficult conversation with a staff member because they want this schedule, but our students aren't requesting that schedule. Our students are requesting these classes, and so this is what your schedule is going to be. So it is really, like I said, bottom-up approach. It's really run and driven by our students.
Do you have another question, Member Kravickas?
I did, thank you. I'll join the bandwagon. We've all heard the accolades of San Luis. Even though I missed the Helios presentation, your reputation goes far. I know obviously you shared your demographics with us, so we know you have a high Latino population, high freedom reduced lunch. I was wondering, what efforts have you made to ensure that your students with disabilities have also succeeded in all these initiatives, especially the college matriculation and the dual enrollment?
The first starts off again with our transition from 8th grade into the high school. And so we start building through their IEPs, and then also transition plans from high school to their next step. And so we start looking at their career interests. We start looking at some skills that we can start building for them to be prepared to go on to the next part of their life. And so through IEP meetings, team meetings, caseworkers, social workers, just a handful of different supports kind of really help them on campus to prepare themselves. And if they might be interested in this class, take it, and then maybe not. And so then we transition their IEP to something else that they're interested in. But really just a handful of people that help with that.
Including integration into our dual enrollment in the CTE. Yeah.
So just on top of that, with co-taught classrooms, making sure that those supports are there. But one thing I want to bring up just real quickly is the CTE program that we have, building maintenance. So students with disabilities, they're learning skills, so they're employable right out of high school. In fact, some even travel to Atlanta to compete nationally, and we've had national champions in building maintenance who then come back to Yuma County and are the best and are very employable. And we've even hired some back in our district. So they're just one of our 11,000 rock stars going to school. So I like that term.
Any last questions? I agree. You guys are rock stars. We are proud partners. I've heard a couple of open invitations to come visit, to sit, learn, and certainly want to thank you for your presentation and those sidewinders. All right, I will now introduce myself. We'll talk a little bit about Good morning, everyone. I am Daniel Corr, the proud president of Arizona Western College, and again, my heart just fills with joy and pride to share what I call the magic going on down here in Yuma. And I will share a little bit about the college, because a lot of K-12 experts here in community colleges funded a little differently. We were founded in 1963 here, which means we're 60 years old this year. I report directly to a 5-person locally elected district governing board. And our funding is a little different in that 2 out of every $3 comes from local property taxes. The community college system in Arizona was built on a 3-legged stool, roughly equal amounts of tuition, state aid, and local aid. That stool is no longer 3-legged. State aid is less than 10%. Our tuition is somewhere around 15% and about 60+% local property taxes, and we fill in with grants and some other stuff. I am super proud of a number of folks who have come to me and said, hey, the staff here is great, and thank you for this. The attitude seems to be great. We have, and we stole this from our maintenance department, just 3 things. Show up, solve problems, and be nice. That's everyone's chore every day. And if we accomplish that, we get things done. We are a community college, but more importantly, our first slide says we are a college of the community. Again, 2/3 of our money comes from the community. If there is a challenge here in Yuma and La Paz County, we need to be part of the solution. We need to do what's best for the community, not the college. So, welcome to Yuma. It is, in fact, the sunniest place on earth. Go ahead, take your phones out, Google it, fact check me. I've never been proven wrong. The sun always shines in Yuma. We are the leafy green capital of the world. When you eat a salad this winter, it comes from Yuma. And it's been referenced, we are a low-wage community. We are a community beset with high rates of poverty. Many of our students here at the college are profoundly impacted by poverty. Like our high school partners, we serve a very large district, two very large counties. And of course, we're very proud that we're across the river from California and down the road from Mexico. So we really take a look at it as a tri-region border. Our mission, quite simply, is transforming lives through education and partnerships to create thriving communities. It's about thriving communities. We have a vision statement that speaks to eliminating poverty. And I'll share with you that when my district governing board grappled with our new vision 7 years ago, there was a strong push to have it say, promote prosperity. And there was back and forth whether it should be, our vision should be to eliminate poverty or promote prosperity. And one of the board members walked over to the cafeteria, Jason, maybe to get some fries, I don't know. There's no shame in midday fries.
The best fries.
Okay, no judgment on your fry habit. But he was over in the cafeteria and he spoke to a couple of students, and they both shared that they were profoundly impacted by poverty, and they viewed this institution as their pathway out of poverty. They weren't in a space to think about prosperity. They were in poverty and saw this as their venue out, and we're really proud that our vision speaks of eliminating poverty. We also have a student experience statement. We know we're the only community college in Arizona with a student statement. We may be the only community college in the nation. This says we are committing to an amazing student experience. That's the part that's not up here. Categorized by these things. And we hold ourselves to that. This idea came from a colleague of mine who was talking about their employees creating an employee experience statement. And I said, well, before we get that, let's commit something to the 12,000 students who will enroll here. And we created a student experience statement. It's up all over campus. And it, again, the first part says we commit to providing an amazing student experience characterized by these things. Do we meet these things all day, every day? No. But it's our North Star that says this is what we have committed to, and we better make sure that we do it. And then there's the BHAG. All about the BHAG. Our big, hairy, audacious goal of doubling baccalaureate attainment by 2035. Why is it audacious? We don't offer baccalaureate degrees. We don't want to offer baccalaureate degrees. I'll talk about our university partners. We want to be the catalyst in this community, working with K-12, working with Yuma Union High School, working with all 3 state universities. We want to be in the center of that, doing what's best for this community, not necessarily for the college itself. So let me tell you about the college. We've got about 12,000 students this semester. 76% are Hispanic, 72% first gen. I will tell you this, we love our first gen students. At graduation, our first gen students walk across the stage with this stole. I have one on because I'm first gen. And their younger siblings, their cousins, their neighbors see person after person after person walk across that stage with the I am first gen stole, and bam, it sets a mood. I also know that when a student walks into my office, many of our faculty and staff have these outside their office. It says, they know they're walking into an office of someone who can relate to them. We have a very high percentage of our faculty who are first generation. And if you aren't first generation, we don't want to discriminate, you can get a sign outside yours that say, I am a first gen advocate. Every November, we celebrate First Gen Day. We have a big old party. We have ice cream and pizza. We want those 72% of students who walk into that classroom to know they belong here. They're not the outsider. They're the majority. It's the non-first gen student who is the minority in every classroom. So we go out of our way to celebrate our first gen students in every way possible. Very high degree of second language learners, again, profoundly impacted by poverty. We're working hard to address that part-time ratio. The more students we can get to attend full-time, we know the more successful they'll be. The bottom line is, if Arizona is to succeed in meeting our educational goals, it will be the model that's occurring here in Yuma. It will be engaging students who are in poverty. It'll be engaging second language learners. It will be engaging our very large and growing Hispanic population and moving them through to success. If Arizona is to succeed, this model that you'll learn a little bit about here today is going to be the key. We're the only community college in Arizona that's growing, and we're up another 5% this semester. Super happy about that. But take a look at that. This should scare you. Maricopa County has lost more students. They've lost 3 times as many students as we enroll. Okay? The state of Arizona in the last 5 years has lost a fifth of the community college enrollment. There's one community college that's growing. You're at it right now at Arizona Western College. We have the top yield in the state by a wide margin, by about 22-23%. Yield is defined as the percentage of high school students who attend their local community college within 1 year of graduation. It really is a direct pipeline. And then it's the dual enrollment that we've talked about so much. Take a look at this, folks. So proud. We dropped tuition for dual enrollment to $25 a credit hour. And as Superintendent Brianza said, if that $75 for a 3 credit hour course causes any difficulty at all, they're awarded a President's Scholarship. I have the ability to award a President's Scholarship. I don't even know how it works. I just say President's Scholarship. So somewhere in the back room erases something and that student enrolls. But that's got to be the way to think about it. That's got to be the way to think about it, because we have increased our dual enrollment by 617% in a relatively short period of time, and we're still going up. We're still increasing that. This is the key, and we want to create a college-going culture in Yuma and La Paz County. It's all about the BHAG. Everything flows from this situation here. That number there is just dual. It doesn't include concurrent enrollment. Students who take an online class or come to us in the evening or walk down the hill from San Luis High School to our San Luis Learning Center after school to take a class. That is just dual enrollment. So here's where it begins to pay off. In the last 2 years, we've had 102 students graduate with their associates a week before they earn their high school diploma, meaning they're finishing high school with 60+ credit hours. That went 47 last year, 55 this year. Almost 100,000 credit hours have been awarded, and the transfer numbers are paying off, right? They're working their way through the system. They're earning the associate's degree. They're moving on to the university. We have seen a 25% increase in the number of our graduates transfer on to one of the 3 state universities. And the next slide will show you how that compares to give you some context. I guess this one does. State as a whole, down 1%. Arizona Western College, up 24%. And this is just last year. This is the pandemic class kind of transferring. The state saw a 14% decline in the number of community college graduates moving on to one of the 3 state universities. We saw a 2.5% increase, again, of the pandemic class matriculating through. Part of that has to do with the next piece, and that is all 3 of our state universities right here on this campus. Some of you were able to take a cart tour in the cool breezes of a Yuma afternoon. Dang, that was hot, wasn't it? But we are just super proud of what we've been able to do with our university partners. And when I say college of the community, you have to relegate yourself. You have to be a partner. You can't dictate the terms. You're working with 3 state universities. You're working with ABOR. You're working with local high school districts. There's a lot of give and take. It can't be siloed. It can't be without compromise. So that's our graduation. Our graduation is unlike anything you've ever seen in an academic sense. It's down at the local high school, Gila Ridge Football Stadium. The stands are packed. We have to let folks onto the field. There's 8,000 people there. It's loud, it's raucous, it's celebratory. The community turns out, and all three state, next to me on the stage, there's Dr. Cruz Rivera, president of NAU. NAU graduates their students. ASU graduates their students. U of A graduates their students. And our students are all there, having received their diplomas already, seeing what's next for them, a university education in Yuma. We're planning a university center here where all three state universities and Arizona Western College will set up a transfer center for a high school student who is looking for information about their next step in education. For our students looking to transfer, for students looking to return to the educational realm, we want a one-stop shop. I recently did a telephone interview with the Aspen Institute and Columbia University Department for Community College Research. They wanted to know what was going on in Yuma in terms of our amazing transfer rates, particularly to NAU. Part of it is we share all our data with NAU. They're able to access our student data. We have a remarkably high-level data sharing agreement because they're not our students. They're our students, and we want them to earn a baccalaureate degree. We want them to earn the BHAG. De Anza Hall behind us here, a residence hall. The third floor is being built out through a $2.8 million grant from ABOR. They're building us the third floor on that so that university students who are coming here for high-level engineering, healthcare, and other programs can live here and earn their degree in Yuma. A little bit of magic. Community partnerships. Again, partnerships right in our mission. The Greater Yuma Economic Development Corporation was paying rent. They're charged with bringing business to Yuma, right? We're charged with helping businesses in Yuma. We had some space in our downtown center. We said, stop paying rent, come on in, pay us $1 a year, and free up that dollar, free up your rent money to build business in the industry here in Yuma. We were also the first community college in America to earn TBEC certification, Transatlantic Business and Industry Certification. What this says is our manufacturing programs, our electronics programs, or others, CTE programs meet EU standards, European Union standards. Why is that important? Because the Greater Yuma Economic Development Corporation is trying to attract European manufacturers to the area. And what's the number one issue for business when they look to relocate? What's your workforce? Yuma can say, our workforce is being trained to EU standards. Come to Yuma, it's a great place to work, live, learn, and do business. And then that's the groundbreaking for our Law Enforcement Training Academy. More about that later. We have really what is a internationally recognized partnership with Yuma Regional Medical Center. I think I mentioned yesterday, they are building a 100,000 square foot training facility on their campus, hospital campus. All of our allied health programs will co-locate there, and we will not be charged a dime. What will we do? We've increased our nursing program from 40 to 60 a semester to build a pipeline. We're adding new healthcare programs. We're sharing faculty. We're sharing equipment. We're sharing knowledge. We're sharing. Because here's the sad fact, folks. You cannot attract a healthcare professional at teaching, say in Rad Tech, to live in Yuma at the salary that the college can pay. Our salary scale calls for. So what do? The hospital picks up part of that salary. We pay our part of the salary. We then crank out Rad Techs that serve this community, that fulfill our mission, which again speaks to thriving communities. Can't have a thriving community if you don't have a healthy community. I'm going to tell you one very quick story that illustrates the amazing partnership that goes on here in Yuma. For many, many years, folks behind me know this, Yuma did not have an inpatient mental health facility. Someone in mental health crisis would be strapped into an ambulance and driven 3 hours. Hey, think about that. Yuma Regional Medical Center stepped up and opened a 26-bed mental health facility. Immediately, they needed that staff, didn't they? The college in record time stepped up and created a behavioral technician certificate program, kind of entry level. Northern Arizona University then stepped in and created the baccalaureate and master's trained level. We now have the programming and the pipeline that will staff an amazing facility here in Yuma. Community problem solved through partnership. No one said, who's going to pay for this, or how's that going to happen, or who's in charge of that? We said, we have to do this together. Let's get that done. And we got it done, and this community benefits. Now, we're not above making our case to the state and national level, right? We want to share the good work being done here. And we have been very successful in securing state and federal funding. We got $7.5 million from Governor Ducey. We'll be breaking ground on the Law Enforcement Training Academy next month. We also did a joint legislative ask with NAU, not this past legislative year, but the year before. We received $5 million, and they are adding a mechanical engineering program that started last week. Mechanical engineering in Yuma, face to face. Why not? Power of partnership. We received congressional earmarks last year that will support our program out in Welton, advanced manufacturing. The Arizona Commerce Authority is giving us $3.8 million to expand, again, our Welton facility, advanced manufacturing, just going gangbusters out there. And then this past year, we received $15 million from the legislature. Yes, $15 million. The other 9 community colleges in Arizona collectively received nothing. We received $15 million. Why? Because we made our case. We had a legislative champion. We had a legislative approach. We created it. We executed it. And as a result, we're bringing a world-class cybersecurity program, yes, to Yuma. And we're bringing a dental hygiene program, yes, to Yuma. Right now, if you want to be a dental hygienist, you have to go to Phoenix or Flagstaff. Now you're going to be able to stay in Yuma and get that done. I will tell you that I keep saying yes in Yuma, these amazing buildings, the programs. When I was being recruited, well, everyone was being recruited to apply for the presidency 8 years ago. Part of the packet had a brochure that said Yuma, and then arrows 3 hours from Phoenix, 3 hours from San Diego. It irritated me. If those places are so great, why don't I just go work there? This is an amazing place. Why not in Yuma? Why not these programs? Why not these opportunities for the amazing students coming out of Yuma Union High School? So then it all comes down to the students. And this is, to me, the most compelling piece of evidence that we have that we're doing something right. This is the Ruffalo Noel Levitz Nationally Normed Student Satisfaction Survey. And boy, it's pages long. But this is kind of the summary, and the math is a little funky because if you don't answer, it gets thrown out. But basically, 3% of our students said, I'm not really having a great experience. But 87% of our students said, this institution, I'm getting what I need. And 45, all the way to the right, said, absolutely. Nationally, this is about the top 5 percentile in terms of student satisfaction of their experience at any one institution. Show up, solve problems, and be nice. Really quickly, we then turned in this past year because we knew we needed to be much more nimble, much more agile, much more responsive to employer needs, and frankly, to student needs. A lot of times people just want a certain set of skills to get a job, and they need that as quickly as possible. And traditionally, higher ed has always packaged everything into degrees and certificates. And the analogy that I use, it comes from the book, The Great Upheaval, is when we were kids, if you liked a couple of songs, Jason, you're young, you probably doesn't apply to you, but when I was a kid, if I liked a couple of songs, you had to buy the album, right? You had to buy the album. Okay. Some of you guys bought CDs or other stuff, yeah. But now what do you do if you like a couple of songs? You just buy a couple of songs. That's the way higher education has got to evolve to, that if you need a certain skill set to get a job or improve your job, you needed to move much more agile. So we created the Entrepreneurial College under the leadership of Ritika Dewan. I wish she were here. She's the CEO of this wing of the college. It is meant to provide non-credit training, credit training, on-demand training, customized training. Students will be able to get industry certifications that may or may not carry college credit, but will get them the skills that they need to enter into the workforce, succeed in the workforce. And then because we want them to come back, we're going to turn that experience into credit through credit for prior learning. So then it will be transcripted. So if a year or two later they want to come back and earn a degree, that credit is waiting for them. So super excited about what that holds. I could go on and on. I know we have work to get to, so I will leave you with that this community, you saw it yesterday, 50-some people show up just to have coffee and greet you, to welcome you to Yuma, to gather with each other. There's a little bit of magic here. It's because we are dedicated to empowering every student, every member of this community. And today, it truly is a great day to be a Matador. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Not a question, but we did get to go on the wonderful open air Yuma golf cart tour yesterday, and and I was very appreciative whenever our golf cart was moving. But I just want to say that your campus is beautiful, and it's so incredible to see the different partnerships that have been established with all three state universities. And more than everything that you're saying, the students that spoke to us yesterday had such pride for their time here, for what they're studying, what they're doing. And I know on our tour, our young lady, she was very much so like telling us all the things that she was proud of. And so I think that that's just speaking to what's going on here. And so you should be a very, very proud president.
Thank you, Jason. I certainly am. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Superintendent.
Yeah, when the presentation was going on from the college, you whispered to me to succeed at the state level, we have to do the same thing. I think it'd be great if you could articulate in some detail exactly what you're thinking we need to do to succeed on the state level.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent. Really what I meant is the demographics of Yuma are so important to the state, right? Our students who live in poverty, our second language learners, our first generation students. This is a microcosm of our challenge at the state level. So the success we're having here, if Arizona is to succeed, this needs to be replicated elsewhere, is really what I meant. That the demographic of Yuma is Arizona. Certainly Arizona's future.
But what I was thinking is, what were your specific thoughts that, what do we need to do at the state level?
Just a quick question. We've talked a lot over this last year about college enrollment, college persistence. How did you negotiate the articulation agreements with NAU and ASU and U of A? Obviously, you have a much stronger one with NAU with data sharing. What was required there, and how was it that there was no pride of ownership, but there was a pride of, we're here about the student, we want to see them not only enroll, but also graduate?
You touched on it. There was no pride of ownership, right? Solve problems. How do we better create a seamless pipeline? And data sharing, because folks get nervous. We can't share that. We've never shared that. Well, can we really not share it just because we've never shared it? What's the harm in sharing it? What do the lawyers say? Yeah, lawyers got involved. And then a little bit, when someone steps on this campus with an interest in pursuing an ag career, that's with our land grant University of Arizona, they're immediately branded Western cats. They get T-shirts, and they're a Western cat. Why? Because you're not at AWC. You're at AWC on your way to U of A, to earning a U of A degree, and we're fine with that. We're fine with, yeah, just no pride of ownership that we have to give and take.
Just additional question, with the state making a decision to allow community colleges to offer bachelor degrees, why has AWC chosen not to be in the business of bachelor degrees, but instead doubling down on those agreements and seamless partnerships with our 3 public institutions?
That's a great question. We have doubled down in that direction. So we were neutral on the legislature allowing baccalaureates, right? Some really wanted it. We were neutral on that issue. We didn't weigh in politically at all. We have an agreement here. We own the 100 and 200 level classes. There is pride of ownership there, right? And our university partners own the junior, senior, and master's degree level courses. If we were to offer baccalaureate degrees, all 3 of those universities would begin offering 100 and 200 level classes. And now we would have 4 institutions slicing the pie ever shorter, without any coherence or coordination. So that's why we've got it. NAU has been here 35 years. So we have a partnership that's working. Let's work on expanding it, bringing more and more degree options. Again, we went to the legislature with a joint ask. Every one of that $5 million went to NAU. Not a cent came to AWC. That's fine. It really was fine because they are adding programs that this community needs and we will feed into. So there was the understanding that we work for the community, not the college. And it really does require you to kind of hang your ego at the door. And say you're part of a partnership. Let's make this work.
Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Kaur. And again, just to be in Yuma these last 2 days and to be on the very warm tour yesterday was inspiring. And I think what I heard from you today and from earlier, and from Teach for America as well, of having a very clear vision and then executing on that vision, which is the execution piece is often the hardest thing to get right. When you think about sort of what's next for Arizona Wesleyan and the incredible partnerships that you all have built, what would you say are the 1 to 2 next moves that you want to make in partnership with the other leaders that you think these last few days? And then again, as you think about sort of high quality school options for all kids, what does that look like as you think about the entire K-12 system and preparation for the college?
Yeah, I think we have room to run still with the dual enrollment. I really do with that first gen student having success at the collegiate level while still in high school. That's what's launching them in a large way onto, and then bringing ever more programs, baccalaureate, face-to-face baccalaureate options from our university partners to campus here. There are a number of students who want to or have to stay in Yuma, and I want them to have just as many options as possible. And then the third part, you see what we've been able to do, all this building growth, none of that involves new tax dollars. There's a lot of partnerships. The community college funding model says, I can't add a lot of tax to local property taxes each year, right? The community can't and won't support that, right? It would be very difficult. So we have to build public-private partnerships, public-public partnerships, and really leverage dollars very creatively to do what we're doing.
One more quick question. Yeah. So I think I heard you say that the kind of dual enrollment in the high school level is critical for you in terms of like continuing that work. What other sort of wishes would you have for the K-12 systems as we think about both replicating what's happening across the state, but what would be sort of 1 to 2 other wishes for K-12 as we think about ensuring that our students are prepared to get a degree?
Boy, that's a great question, Julia. Member Myerson. I think Principal Jankowski referenced that we have a site right down the hill from like you walk down out of San Luis High School into our learning center. The more we just blend or blur those lines, where our faculty are in the high school faculty are in the college, we're sharing facilities, we're sharing that experience is almost inevitable. that partnership. I think Superintendent Brianzer referenced that Somerton High School put Toros, so Toros to Matadors. I love that synergy. Just opened up
More
in
alignment on
August.
school mascots.
What's that?
More alignment on school mascots.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
We're even,
okay.
but it really is the alignment. They reference Canvas as their learning platform. We're on Blackboard. We moved to Canvas because the local high school is on Canvas. We wanted that transition to be seamless. We wanted them in the high school taking dual enrollment classes with the same learning management system. The more that they're sitting, especially junior, senior year, thinking, I'm prepping for AWC, or I'm going to go to Tempe. I'm ready for that. But the 86% out of San Luis High School that went on to college, a vast majority, 70-some percent of those came to AWC. So blurring those lines. It's kind of what I'd love to entertain any questions, but I know we want to get. Oh,
Well, actually, Member Krivickas has a
yeah.
question.
Member Krivickas, go ahead.
Hello, President Kaur. Thank you for all the amazing work. The data in some of those slides is startling, and I'm so proud of the work you guys are doing. As you know, the dual enrollment bill that passed this year had an amendment in it that would allow and require for IEPs to be honored. The Helios data unfortunately showed us that students with disabilities, their participation in dual enrollment was so low, they honestly couldn't even report it. But I know Yuma has been very supportive. The MOU you already have in place already supportive. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your effort?
You broke up a little bit, but I think your question is about how we serve students with special needs in dual enrollment.
Have been and
Okay. Carla, let me jump into this, and if I fail to recognize it, I know that our counselors and the high school counselors, they have IEPs. Many of them are perfect fits for many of our CTE dual enrollment classes. So there's no prohibition. In fact, quite the opposite. Our high school partners are very assertive in finding the right spots, including our dual enrollment. So yeah, we have no challenge with the language of the bill. We had no challenge with opening up dual credits and CTE or otherwise to any and all students. And I think our numbers show that we've been really successful in doing that.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'll jump back up here.
Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, do you want to take maybe a 5-minute break?
Sure. Yeah.
So we'll be back at 10:50.
Well, you've got to be the college cheerleader too. That's part of the role. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call us back into session, and our friends from Yuma Union don't have to go home, but they can't stay here. Actually, we'd love you to stay. Let's see, Shelley. So I'm gonna move us on then to item 5, which is presentation, discussion, and possible action to approve the FY 2025 State Board of Education budget request. And Director Ross, this will be to you to tee it up for us.
Dr. Corr, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. In your packet, you have the draft of the proposed budget that we will be submitting to the governor's office upon approval. Each agency has a budget due to the governor's office by September 1st, excuse me. And so we've included that in here. Just to highlight a couple of pieces, we are not making any requests for additional funding at this point. As you may recall, the board did request additional funding 2 years ago to open up some new positions, a policy director, Rico, and some other folks as well to address open enrollment, to address some needs in the investigative unit. And so we are not requesting additional funding for this year. A couple of the key changes or things I would highlight from the budget are that we have allocated funds to restructure our investigative unit a bit. As you know, the board is responsible for educator discipline, and so we have an investigative unit that really has 3 prongs. There are our investigators led by our chief, Dave Spelich, who's amazing at his job. All of our investigators are retired law enforcement. They do a wonderful job of keeping our classrooms safe. They field hundreds of calls a year that they investigate. And so when those cases are investigated, they then go to our enforcement action team led by Garnett Burns, who's wonderful. And that team, looks at the cases, makes recommendations for consequences, and then those can either be agreed upon in a negotiated settlement or go to the Professional Practices Advisory Committee. That's where our 3rd prong of that team comes in, which is the Attorney General's office. And so where we have used funding is to get some more support to our enforcement action team. At the moment, it's just Garnett and Dawn. And as our investigators are working away on cases, those cases are coming to this team of 2. So we are actually making some changes to some titles and some promotions, and then hiring a new administrative assistant for that team to make it a team of 3. Where we have also allocated some funding differently is with the Attorney General's office. Historically, that money has gone to the Attorney Generals for Associate Attorney Generals to support our work. The Attorney General's office was encountering some struggles with hiring, and so that was part of what contributed to a backlog of cases for a bit. The AG's office was fantastic. We approached them. We said, hey, what if we went with external counsel? They were very open to that, and so we now have an agreement in place with them where they will hire AAGs to support our work. We pay for 4.5 FTEs. If they are not able to reach the 4.5, whatever the remainder is, will be to external counsel. And having that in place, you all are very aware of that change because it has really increased the flow of cases that are coming before the board each month. So I want to stress again, that is not due to an uptick in activity in any way on the part of teachers. It is just our ability to better reduce that backlog. So we, again, just the changes will be going from 22 employees to 23, so we're hiring 1 new person. And then the other sort of big ticket item is we are redoing our website. As much as I enjoy revisiting 1996 every time I go to our homepage, it's really time, and other agencies have redone theirs as well. We've used the Charter Board and some other agencies as a model, feeling that if somebody visits a government agency related to education, there should be some consistency in what they encounter in those websites. So we're working with those folks. And actually, we are shooting for mid-late September to launch. Now that there's real time and there's government time. So government time, you should add a month. It's like contractor time, you add 6 months. So probably around October, but that will be coming very quickly. And then that is actually going to help us foster even some more changes where we can provide a lot of resources more efficiently on our webpage. So again, no changes to the request from the governor's office, keeping funding the same, but I just wanted to clue you in on how we are using some of that funding differently as we move forward. I'll take any questions.
Director Ross, the salary increases, if any, are determined at the state level. That's not embedded in a budget request. Is that correct?
So the state board budget is a lump sum budget. So we do have quite a bit of control and flexibility over how we use those funds. There was a 10% raise that was passed last year for all state employees. That's already accounted for in our budget moving forward.
Okay.
But it doesn't preclude board staff or the executive director from making a decision to pay for staff.
Thank you. Other questions for Director Ross? No, hearing none. And so you are looking for a formal, I would entertain a motion to approve the FY25 State Board of Education budget request as presented. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
The Vice President Haley and Superintendent Horn, second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Item 6, presentation and discussion of the board's 2024 strategic priorities. Information only, but Director Ross, you want to tee it up for us?
Thank you, Dr. Corr, Superintendent Horn, and members of the board. I am super excited for where this is coming in the retreat. Off of the energy of those presentations, this is, I got a little dusty in here at one point. I have to say, I was just so proud to hear from about all the great work that's occurring and all the great work that is happening across the state, especially in collaboration to improve the lives of students. As somebody who grew up in poverty and as somebody who was first generation, that was really hitting home for me. So I'm again very excited that that's the energy to which we are coming to this portion of the retreat. So just to table set a little bit, the board had come into 2023 with some legislative priorities that sort of acted as strategic priorities as well. During Aaron and our time here, our long 7 months on staff, we have added a couple based on your feedback, and then we sent out a Google Doc to you all, Google form, to solicit feedback from you about what strategic priorities you would like to keep, and then what you might want to add, and then what changes might need to occur. The goal of today is to establish what those strategic priorities will be for the board, have them align with the establishment of our legislative priorities, and then have that further align with the first ever State Board research agenda. And so having all three of those pieces in one, I think today was a good example of what that can look like, in that, these presentations that we had, not only did they spotlight amazing work that's happening, not only did they spotlight amazing work that's happening in Western Arizona, but in particular, they aligned with the priorities that you all brought to us this year, one of which being college matriculation and attainment, especially for students from vulnerable populations, and then teacher recruitment and retention. And so that's really the spirit in which we've embraced those strategic priorities from a staff perspective and sort of where they're moving forward. So if you look in your packet, you have a one-page summary that Aaron put together for you, and then I'm going to jump right into the presentation. Last year at the retreat, the previous executive director, Alicia, did some work with you all to establish collective commitments. These are what you committed to as board members. I'm not going to review those. I just wanted to put those in there as a reminder that this is work you all did last year, and you all are amazing and follow them. And so I don't think there's any need to go back and readdress them. Up next, I did want to, not so subtly, remind the board and remind everyone who's in attendance of just the ongoing responsibilities of the board and board staff. So these are outside of or connected to, but in addition to any strategic priorities we establish. So obviously, the board is in charge of rulemaking, the A through F accountability system, and as I've spoken to each of you in our staffing meetings, we are entering A through F season. So just as a reminder, the ATACs have looked at potential cut scores. They're going to vote on those. That recommendation will come to you. You'll then vote on cut scores. Letter grades will be released. The appeals committee will meet, and then appeals will be approved in December. So it's going to be a quick run between now and December for the A through F accountability system. We also oversee educator discipline. This is a really large part of the work of board staff. We have an amazing team that we support, but the number of cases that come through, and you can imagine how high profile some of this work is. And so it requires a great amount of attention. We oversee the ESA appeals in particular, and then certification. And just actually to let you know, the certification advisory committee will be starting up again soon. We'll have an item on the September agenda for approving some members. And then, of course, constituent services and research. But let's take a look at strategic priorities. And so coming into 2023, you all had set 3 legislative priorities. So we're sort of treating them as strategic priorities as well. And I wanted to give you a quick update on each of those. One was supporting the lifting of the aggregate expenditure limit. And as you all know, it has been suspended through FY24. So that's, in a better place. Another priority was to reduce the backlog of cases awaiting action from the investigative unit. Again, you're very aware that that backlog is being reduced because of the amount of cases that are coming through. And then there was a desire to focus on early literacy, and this priority has not actually had as much concrete attention. So there's a Move On One Reading rulemaking package, which will come back in September. And then I actually didn't know if you all knew this, but I sit on the Read On Arizona Advisory Board, which keeps board staff plugged into the good work of early literacy. And actually, we have Terry Clark, who is the state literacy director from Read On Arizona here. And as we get into the discussion, we may call Terry up for some expertise. So during 2023, after Aaron and I joined on January 9th, we met with each of you, we talked to each of you, and 2 of the priorities that emerged, 2 things to which you all told us you'd like to give attention, are teacher recruitment and retention. And so as an update, we had a presentation in June on the data. We're just this month have begun spotlighting programs that are having some success. So that was our Teach for America presentation. And then we work closely with the department, with their teacher recruitment and retention team led by Bruce Duplanty, and with the governor's office, who has a teacher recruitment and retention task force, to make sure that we're aligning in our efforts and not duplicating our efforts. And in fact, the governor's office, their report will be ready probably for the January meeting. So just some of the concrete steps that are coming. And one of the goals there is to really identify and build a list of strategies and resources for the field. The other piece that you all brought to us was college matriculation and attainment, and particularly for vulnerable populations. We've had a presentation on FAFSA completion, on ECAP, My Future AZ, and then again, spotlighting some places that are having some success. So we had our friends from Human Union and from San Luis today. So today was a really actually nice kind of example of where those pieces are going and can go. So in our solicitation of feedback from you, we asked you what priorities would you like to keep and what would you potentially like to add, and so we've got that on that slide. Early literacy was a big topic with a focus on researching and supporting the funding of programming of evidence-based teacher training in the science of reading and dyslexia, evidence-based intervention programs in reading, and augmenting the science of reading and educator prep programs where the board does have some direct authority. There was a real push in that feedback to keep college matriculation and attainment and teacher recruitment and retention, especially now that it maybe is a little more apparent where those 2 strategies are headed as far as the board is concerned. And then there were 2 new ones that emerged, special education and kind of a cross-section of interest there, everything ranging from transition planning, changing the age of transition planning for students, all the way to the board reflecting OSEP guidance that was released quite recently, and then career and technical education as well came up as a topic. So as part of this exercise, we are just looking for guidance from you all, and so we've got some questions at the bottom here. Which of these priorities would you like us to, or which of these strategic areas would you like us to prioritize? And are there any that you feel, is there an order for you, or are there any that you feel should be removed so that there's more time and space for others? And then we would love some guidance on the outputs that you would be looking for from this. And this will really help direct board staff as we move forward. Where this will go is I will take your feedback, turn it into a formal strategic plan, and bring it to you in September for approval. So any feedback, questions? What would you all like to see? This is the time for you to help us.
Dr. Hagerman?
So I got a question about the bandwidth of the department, of the board. Of these 5 things, is it really doable to have 5 things on your agenda?
Superintendent Horn, Dr. Core, Dr. Hagerman. So what I would say is, as far as board staff goes, definitely it's a big lift with all of the responsibilities we already have. To have 5 priorities would be big. Having said that, we can basically work with you all to maybe rotate. We wouldn't have 5 presentations at every meeting. We could kind of rotate where things are getting spotlit, where work is happening, and so that everything's sort of getting its due attention. It's a big lift, I'll be honest with you, again, with all the other work that occurs, but the top 3 are sort of already started. And so there's some momentum there that they won't have quite as maybe much of a lift as the last 2.
President Core? Hello?
Yes, there we go. Go ahead, Member Kerbickas.
Hopefully you can hear me a little bit better. I switched to laptops. To Dr. Hagerman's question, maybe a way to not whittle it down, because clearly they're all important. We've all identified that, but really focusing on what the board can do. What kind of statutory regulatory authority do we do? So it's not just, okay, how do we identify that there's a problem, but what can the state board do? Do we have leverage? Do we have levers that we can pull to affect all that, rather than just kind of addressing issues more broadly and discussing them, but really narrowing down on what it is that we can do and affect?
Just thank you, Member Kerbickas, and building off of exactly both of those 2 points, I would totally agree. I think I think 5 priorities is quite a few. And so my preference would be to kind of keep the 3 that we have currently been focusing on around early literacy, teacher recruitment, and retention and college matriculation, and possibly within that around special education, career education, think about some of those as outputs or outcomes from the work of the first 3, so that we are just sort of narrowing our focus. And then to Carla's point, I think what I'd love to see when we come back in September is, and maybe it's some of our discussion now, exactly what outcome we want to see the board be able to say, like, here's our North Star. We have worked over the course of this next year to achieve X, and we feel like there's been success around something related to each of those first 3 priorities. But I think something really tangible, not necessarily just a list of best practices, but something that like we can say this has shown up for students, for teachers, that can feel like a real win, both for I think the time and energy that everyone would spend on it over the course of the year, but something again that just tangibly shows up in terms of achievement for students.
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, Member Meyerson, thank you. So actually one of the questions we have is for you all actually is, what are the outcomes you would like to see? We can certainly generate ideas and bring them to you all, but we're always better together. And so we would also love to hear from you all. Hey, what are some specific things you would like us to make sure we're working towards?
Go ahead, Member Kerbickas, did you want to jump in?
Thank you. Sorry, it's hard for me to hear and know when to jump in. I apologize.
No No worries.
Sean's great question. I think isn't there always that difference between outputs and outcomes? So, I mean, clearly, like in literacy, we want to see 100% of kids reading, right? That's definitely the North Star. But like what are the strategic things that the board can do? Like the move on, the literacy plan requirements rulemaking is a really good example. That is something tangible that the state board can do, or it's legislation, or it's incorporating something into our accountability system, or it's certification. What are the things that we have statutorily and regulatory that we can affect? And then the North Star being the data, the improvement of matriculation or reading.
Thank you, Member Kurbickas. I want to, if I may, echo some remarks made by colleagues here, and I don't think that two additions are necessarily additions. Even I'll point to CTE. That ends in end college matriculation, which is one of our goals. So I don't know that they're distinct and separate. I think there's a ton of overlap. And then I'm kind of kicking around Member Kurbickas' comment. What levers do we control, right? What do we want to see happen, as opposed to what can we influence? And I think that college, obviously I have a keen interest in college, in all of them, but college matriculation probably in particular, and the intersection with CTE. I think the Perkins plan is being reauthorized this year, and we have an opportunity with how we allocate those dollars and what the expectations are. That's done by the department, approved by the board as I understand it. But I think there's a lever, if you will, that we have either influence with or direct control of, and how we do that. And I think that Perkins reauthorization is every 5 years. So this is our shot. And if we don't influence its direction now, kind of hold your peace for the next 5 years. So really just echoing that, I think these aren't necessarily to addition, but can be tucked in under. And I love the focus on what do we really control, and then focusing on that. Other thoughts? Superintendent Horn.
Well, in terms of specific goals under college matriculation, our state badly needs higher proficiency rates.
But then, oh no, okay, we're doing the eye meld there, wasn't sure.
President Corr?
Yeah, please, yeah.
So as I'm thinking about it, I'm trying to think of like the plan in like 3 parts, because I see your research priorities and I like that idea, because I think one of the things we need to, as a board, to just really get into the data and understand before we go for levers that we might not have the background knowledge. So I kind of see like this is the knowledge that we need to build up as a board to make the best decisions, and then kind of know the menu of our levers for the actions in these areas, and then have these long-term outcomes that we continue to monitor. So while we're trying to utilize different levers, are they really moving the needle or not? Because sometimes things look right, the research might even say it's the right thing, but then we do it and it doesn't move data at all. And so my suggestion would be, and it kind of goes with where you're going with research priorities, here are the things that the board needs to understand more deeply. Here are the levers that we need to think about, which ones are we going to invest the most time in, and then what are those long-term measures that we're going to continue to watch over time to see whether we're really moving things in the way we want to.
I think I really appreciate what you just said, Dr. Hagerman. Just thinking about the research and sort of the different points that are here. Superintendent Horn just mentioned we need higher proficiency rates. Okay, so what is happening already? We have a Move On When Reading program. How is that impacting proficiency rates? What are there additional levers and tools that we can do? Is the instruction that we are providing, or the requirement that the literacy designation, is that having an impact? Are we seeing the long-term impacts? And 5th through 12th grade as a result of that literacy designation? I know that's like a long-term research project, but perhaps there's some data that we can begin. And I also am aware that it happened during COVID. So perhaps we're going to start seeing improvements now going into the future. I think at the same time, looking at college matriculation, when we're thinking about proficiency rates, and we see as college, high school graduation is a key indicator in our A through F letter grades, how many of individuals are going into college, how many are staying, how many are having to go through remedial education. So we asked a question of Dr. Kaur, in this particular county, proficiency rates are lower, but college going is fairly high. Why is that? There's a English 101 class, English 107, as Dr. Kaur informed me, that is for non-native English speakers. Individuals that pass that class have greater skills and tools that are then able to be more effective in their long-term college persistence rate. So is there some additional information that we can think about that plays into college matriculation? Getting at the suggestion addition with career and technical education, one of my great concerns is something that I suggested. It's great that we have a number of individuals that are taking career and technical education programs and getting certifications. How often is that actually aligned with industry-related credentials? You know, we heard from our friends here and Yuma that they have a robust industry partners that are helping to advise those credentials to make sure that they're aligned with the demands that are here in this particular county. I know that Elevate at AZ, which is an initiative by the Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce, they've been working with industry across in order to elevate the career and technical education programs with apprenticeships. Anyway, this is a long ramble, but it would be interesting to be able to collect that information, perhaps get that information from the Arizona Department of Education. It'd be fantastic to be able to get that. And then similarly, perhaps work with Helios Education Foundation Decision Center to see if there's some information that we're able to get in order to help inform what are the things that we're doing at college matriculation, how are these other factors, then what can the board specifically do?
Maybe just one quick more
please,
comment on my end, Director Ross, is I think that to Dr. Hagerman's point, I think that as we think about the data that we want to look at to inform the outcome that we want to go after, obviously there are fields that are immersed deeply in this research, and we have a thought on what that data is that we're looking at, but also certainly the outcome we're going after. But I think another piece is, how do we sort of think about this as if we have these three goals, we pick three key outcomes associated with each of those three goals. There are both obviously leading and lagging indicators that we could be looking at. And so how can we actually also, instead of just once a year, right, getting the report on, which typically is where this data is, how can we also look at data where more regularly we are getting updates on the moves that we've made as a board, how those have informed that ultimate lagging indicator, that ultimate outcome that we want to see. And so I guess I would just encourage us that as we're picking these key priorities in the North Star that we want to go after, we're picking things that we can monitor more closely, especially as we all have certain finite terms here, but how can we pick things that we can say that we've had an impact on and that we can make moves around as well.
President Kaur?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I wanted to mention, I don't know if the board is aware, the Arizona Board of Regents does a report every year called the Post-Secondary Attainment Report. And it's very unique in the sense that they take the graduation cohort data from ADE and they match it with the National Post-Secondary Clearinghouse data. So they can literally tell us where every kid, every student that graduated from an Arizona high school in 2021, and if and where they enrolled in a post-secondary institution anywhere in the country, 2, 4, or certificate. It's a very powerful report they've been doing for a super long time. Just 2 years ago, they began to include students with disabilities, free and reduced lunch, and I can't remember, and I think English language learners. very, very powerful data. And I think it'd be really great to have a presentation from the regions, especially because this is data that they're using to benchmark progress. So if we can kind of also connect that with our work, I think that would be really powerful.
Great, thank you. Director Ross, do you have any questions for us that will help your, yeah, please go ahead. He smiled, so I assume that's yes.
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. This is very helpful. What I will say is we need some guidance and concrete steps. So for example, when college matriculation, came up as a topic, we had a FAFSA presentation come, and they had post-secondary attainment reports were part of that. We had ECAP, we had My Future AZ. My sense, and I don't know if I'm correct or not, is that the board was like, okay, we've had a lot of presentations, sort of what's next, and so that's kind of where we're also what we're looking for. So a lot of the feedback I'm getting right now is good in that you're saying we want more information, we want more data, and I feel like, well, we kind of brought you a lot of that information, we've brought you a lot of that data. What we really need is what would you like us to do next with it? Now we can absolutely, what the notes I'm taking, it sounds like in lieu of what Member Meyerson was saying, like the traditional strategic plan of like big goals, 3 little goals. It sounds like the board is more about embracing a process of here's the issue, here are the levers the board might have, here's some data and information, and then we'll look at the outcome. And that I'm more than happy to sort of internalize and incorporate a process like that. But it does leave the outcomes a little nebulous at the moment. And I also want to check your guys' temperature on that, because I don't want there to be frustration from the board if those outcomes are not clear at the moment, if there's an understanding that they would sort of be generated, or if there's a preference of generating them first, a mix of both. But we just a little more concrete for staff would be great.
Can I push on that, Bruce, a little bit?
Yeah.
So we're gathering here, and time's kind of running short, and we have a couple board members missing, and so on. You wanted to bring the strategic plan update in September. Is that set in concrete? Because I get what you're saying. You're saying, hey, I'll do what you want, but if you want like kind of a something a little meatier, a little meat on this bones, give it to me. And I'm suggesting that at kind of this late hour, as we lose members and some aren't here, can we push back September to October and do some work between now and then?
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Yeah, absolutely. The September deadline's artificial. Okay. We sort of just created these like, oh, we'll do this in this month and this and that month. But what we can do, and this is a good first step, is it does sound like college, it sounds like post-secondary opportunities is the definitive umbrella. It sounds like, every kid having equitable access to the path to it which they would like to follow is sort of the big umbrella that's emerged, and everything else really does fall beneath it, right? They need to be able to read. They need all of our student populations need access. Yeah, they need well-informed teachers who can instruct effectively. So definitely that has emerged in an effective way, and then it sounds like a desire for a specific sort of process has emerged, which is really helpful. So yeah, what we can do is go back and, steal a term from Aaron, we can noodle this, bring you all sort of a draft of ideas, and then once you all have had a chance to look at drafts, we can adopt. There's no time. The point of this is to be useful, not to be done, like not to be on a shelf. Yeah.
Awesome. And Dr. Hagerman, I believe, had a.
Yeah, so just to confirm, I think that approach of thinking of post-secondary attainment, that what happens after is the ultimate goal, and then thinking about the things underneath it. I guess the one thing I would love in September is kind of a menu when we think about levers that are actual. It's like, what's all my options that I can think about, and that we're going to do all those levers, but so that we're really kind of like creating as many options of actions that when we pick what has the most impact for students, we're kind of looking at a range of things and not sort of instantly going to this thing and that thing. Let's globally look at the things that we can do and then think about the impact that different things could have, and then, okay, these are the things that will have the most impact.
Great. Other thoughts?
And Dr. Corr, this is Member Kravickas again.
Yeah, please, yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to do a special call out on special education, only because there's been a recent development that I wanted to discuss with the board. I've discussed with staff. So even you can see from that list, the areas of interest, they've been kind of varied, almost scattered, because they've come up through constituent issues from a variety of ways. So even in speaking with staff over the past few months, it's been difficult to try to figure out how would we tackle all of these. Well, interestingly, an opportunity has arisen. The U.S. Department of Ed, I think it's called OSEP, the Office of Special Education Programs, released a very big new guidance package within, I think it was the past month. Under federal law, the state, via sometimes the department, the state board, have general supervisory, I'll say powers, but requirements under federal law to promote and support special education programs and improve outcomes. They put out a substantive new guidance package on what that means for states. And it really encompasses everything that's listed in that area and more. Our special education rules have not, for the most part, been updated or looked at in a couple decades, with one small exception. And they're actually pretty small. So what I discussed with staff is, as the state of our Department of Education begins to wrestle with this new package, I think it provides a really great opportunity to use this to as the lens to look at all of what we're doing and update our state board rules. Granted, this is a long-term project, as we've discussed with staff, but this way we're really aligning with what this new real package is and having conversations. Okay, this is what the Fed's saying, but what does Arizona want to do? What can we do? And I just think it's a really cool opportunity. So I guess when I'm thinking about the goals of post-secondary, certainly we want to improve post-secondary outcomes for kids with disabilities as well. But I feel like this one is unique in the sense that we have this rare opportunity to align this conversation with a bigger idea.
Very good, thank you. And Member Kravickas, just so I understand, is it your sense that those levers, so I'm not aware of this new OSEP guidance and appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Are those levers available to the department or to the board or to both?
Thank you very much for that question. And yeah, you're right. That is the lever. I didn't think about that as we're talking about levers. This is the lever for special ed, is the alignment of this. It's both. It's a joint effort, because obviously the special education rules are in our rulemaking, are in our rule package. So it would be updating that. But clearly it would be in concert and tandem with what the department needs to do with their internal processes, and of course, as our experts. But it would require, I shouldn't say require, but it would definitely necessitate, and we would want a broad stakeholder group looking at this for some time.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Dr. Corr, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Yes, so this is good. This is really helpful. We will take this back, start crafting a document for you all to look over and to go through iterations before it's brought to the board for adoption. Again, the timeline is ours. So,
excellent.
Yeah,
excellent. I appreciate that, Director Ross, and to Dr. Hagerman's comment, the kind of the guiding North Star umbrella in which we're tucking other things in, and I love the inventory of what levers are available, because one size fits none, right? So I love that. Very good. And presentation and discussion of the 2023 legislative session and the board's 2024 legislative priorities. And Director Ross and Rico, you're going to walk us through this one?
Appreciate it.
Came all the way down to Yuma. We got to put you to work, Rico. So here you go.
Got to get my time in.
Yeah, exactly.
So, President Corr, Vice President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Today, I'm just going to give you guys a brief overview on the 2023 legislative session. We're going to review our implementation progress on some of the bills that implicate the State Board of Education, and then I will kick it over to Sean to provide a framework for our 2024 legislative priorities. So the 2023 legislative session commenced on January 9th, and sign and die adjourned on July 31st, making it our state's longest legislative session, making it 204 days. For context, about 1,562 bills were introduced. 205 of those were signed into law by Governor Hobbs, and 35 were sent directly to the Secretary of State. In last year's session, about 388 bills were signed into law. And past legislation for this session is going to be effective on October 29th, 90 days after the end of session. So to start with some bills that passed that directly affect board responsibilities, the first of which is open meeting law, SB 1270. All this legislation does is require that board meetings provide sufficient seating for our reasonably anticipated attendance. We're not required to relocate outside of our largest regular meeting room, and our posted agendas must now include the time that the public will have access to the boardroom. So we're going to throw this into the September meeting. It's going to be 30 minutes before the public will have access. The next bill is SB 1729. This bill establishes the Dual Enrollment Student Development Fund within the state board, and to provide financial assistance and reimbursements for students. We talked about this a little bit earlier, so I won't rehash the entire bill, but statute doesn't dictate any specific action from the board on this, although we are anticipating that we could have a policy framework discussion land at our September meeting for this bill. Next up, we have HB 2060. So if you guys recall, I think a year ago, almost to the day, at the regular board meeting before our board retreat last year, the board adopted a kindergarten entry assessment tool to conform to legislation passed in 2021, charging us with adopting a single statewide tool. And HB 2060 passed in this session revises some of the LEA reporting requirements and also allows districts and charters to use alternative assessments other than the board-approved model for this kindergarten entry assessment. This legislation also removes the requirement for the state board to define motivational assessments for our K through 3 reading programs. This can be found in policy 005 on our state board website. So we're going to be transitioning this document into a policy resource for school districts. Up next, passed in the state budget, SB 1729, we had some legislation pertaining to ECAPS. So as this has been kind of a running board strategic priority, we had presentations from the ECAPS at ADE and My Future AZ. This new legislation appropriates $5 million for ADE to provide a career mapping tool, and it also directs the board to require public schools to complete ECAPS for every high school student and update it annually. As of right now, staff has determined that our current rule has already satisfied this statute, and we're just now binded to maintain it. All right, and then next I'm going to highlight some recent legislative developments from this session. These boards don't necessitate any board action, but they encompass our legislative priorities from last year, policy areas members have expressed interest in, or high-profile legislation. The first of which is the lift of the AEL for the next 2 school years in HCR 2001 and SCR 1041. The following bill is on classroom prep programs. This is a highly technical bill, but HB 2057 requires school districts and charter schools running in-house, grow your own classroom-based prep programs to classify those enrolled as paid employees. That could be something the board could keep their eyes on for retention. The next bill is K through 4 suspension requirements. In 2021, legislation passed prohibiting all students in K through 4 from being suspended unless the student was proven to be dangerous or non-responsive to targeted intervention. This session, HB 2460 was passed, and it walks back some of this previous legislation and allows LEAs to suspend students for up to 2 consecutive days. It further clarifies that the suspensions can't exceed 10 days total over the course of a school year. And then we have a bill covering governing board member employment, HB 2459. So this bill permits school districts to employ former governing board members during the preceding 2 years after their public service, as long as they're in positions directly serving students. The next bill is SB 1584, allowing small school districts to employ third-party contractors or substitute teachers that are immediately related to the governing board members. And we have in the budget also a professional development bill. This pilot program allows school districts with less experienced teachers to support and hire professional development staff. $3 million of funding was allocated for this bill. And then before handing it over to Sean, I just wanted to cover some of the timeline for next legislative session briefly. So we are at the August retreat right now. In September and October, we will begin having staff start policy research, meeting and engaging with stakeholders on some of our broad priorities, and come back and report to the board about our December adoption for legislative priorities. For background information about the upcoming session, there's been a decent amount of elected official turnover. We have about 5 new members of the legislature, including in some leadership positions, although the makeup will remain the same. So it's a 31-29 split, Republican majority in the House and 16-14 in the Senate, same party. The JLBC has also released an August report, their monthly fiscal highlights, that July revenues have come in 5.1% below the prior fiscal year, which was actually a forecast loss. And just for procedural stuff, in January when session starts, 22 days of introducing bills in the House, 29 days in the Senate, unless permission is granted otherwise by the Rules Committee, 6 weeks of hearing bills in standing committees, 1 week of crossover, 4 weeks of hearing bills in standing committees after they've been switched in the houses. And then I'll send it over to Sean.
Thanks, Rico. Great job. And before we move on, any questions for Rico?
Rico, real quick, my understanding is those lines have crossed, right? So expenditures at the state level now exceed revenue, right?
I would have to get back
to you. Okay. I had heard that those lines were getting closer and now have finally crossed, but okay.
So thank you, Rico. Dr. Corr, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. So very similar process from the board priorities. And in fact, we may be able to kind of borrow from that pretty heavily. We are looking at 2 parts of for the legislative discussion, effectively macro level priorities. This would be bills that the board could support or oppose. And these are broader level ideas, bills that support early literacy, for example. And then more specific priorities if the board is looking for specific bills. And so for the 2024 legislative priorities, when we solicited feedback, the macro priorities you all gave us were, again, early literacy, dual enrollment, college matriculation and attainment, teacher recruitment and retention, special education, CTE, and then summer learning. So are there any of these? So the macro is a little easier because it's more kind of just observing. Any of these that you would change, remove, or add to? Okay, so that's good. So we'll keep those. And then at this point, I know it's difficult because it's sort of early, but as Rico was explaining, to run a bill, really the work starts next month to start laying the groundwork, which many of you know better than I do. So any specifics or the specifics that you all provided to us for specific bill ideas were bills related to special education, college recruitment retention, or teacher recruitment retention, college matriculation and attainment. The educator discipline one was actually from last year. There's a little loophole in the law that doesn't allow for reciprocal discipline in the same way for non-certificated teachers. And so the board had approved that last year. By the time Aaron and I came in, it was a little late to find a bill folder. And so we're going to bring that forward this year. So Member Kravickas, do you want to talk at all about the special education piece?
Yeah, thank you. Special education in and of itself is a really broad topic, so I don't know that that needs to stay on the list, at least in that form. Going back to our original conversation, I think if we've identified our big topics, the levers in which we use, I think that would also help our subcommittee identify what bills we want to support or weigh in, because they would be feeding into the goals that we've already set. Again, college matriculation, obviously sounding like it's the big one, early literacy continuing. Does that help give you more feedback? Especially it's pretty broad. It can be a lot of different things. So I don't know if that needs to stay at least in that form on the list.
So Member Kravickas, I was kind of teeing you up to talk about your bill if you wanted to.
Well, I don't know for sure. Well, thank you. I didn't really say it because I don't know for sure if I have one.
Okay, that's fine then. I didn't. Okay.
I will just highlight the issue because it was and I can send it through staff, the article that ran on NPR about 2 months ago, talking about students with disabilities graduating early. The article said it was being pushed out early. That's their language. But it's an issue that I've heard from parents for many, many years and from attorneys and advocates. So there is a group of us kind of thinking about how we might address that. Honestly, though, the way in which it's discussed, I think it would fit really nicely under that college matriculation goal. Because that's really what it's about. It's about graduation planning. It's tied to the ECAP. It's about aligning all of that stuff. And potentially Arizona also has never had a transfer policy. There's a transition policy, I take it back, under federal law. Under federal law, if a student has an IEP, when the student turns 16, it basically turns into a transition plan where it's all supposed to be about post-secondary outcomes. 29 states have lowered that age, have created their own transition policy, exceeding federal outlines and going down to 14. 2 states have gone down to 12. So one of the things that we're probably going to propose is that Arizona have its first transition policy. But again, if it's really nicely under our goal of improving college matriculation.
Thank you, Member. Yeah, I just wanted to give you, as we had discussed prior, I wanted to give you a chance to sort of tee up the bill. Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, so we can really just borrow from the strategic priorities discussion in laying out our legislative priorities. It sounds like, again, all falling under sort of the same line. The legislative priorities will be presented in December. That's standard for the board to be adopted. And then just as a reminder, there's a legislative committee of the board who meets monthly, January through hopefully May, maybe a little bit longer to help shape board policy. So any questions before we move to data?
I do have a quick question, Dr. Ross. I'm wondering, and my timing is perfect as my friend Janice walks out of the room. Do we make any effort to coordinate, say, with the Helioses of the world and Ed Forward, Arizona, and even ABOR and who all have it was really the heroic efforts of Helios and Elevate Ed that pushed through the dual enrollment for us, a big win. What, if any, do we have in terms of coordination and collaboration and multiplying the power of collaboration?
For Superintendent Horn, members of the board, absolutely. So Aaron and Rico meet, actually all of us meet with partners monthly. And part of that discussion is to talk about legislative agendas and then where do those agendas align. It's always going to be more impactful if a group goes down to the legislature and supports a bill or opposes a bill. So yes, absolutely, that is something that is standard practice.
Fantastic. Great. Any thoughts or questions from my colleagues? All right. So it's hard to believe we're preparing for next legislative session already, but we are, aren't we?
Poor Aaron. It just never ended.
Right.
So up next, Jessica is going to talk about research agenda. So very similar vein of discussion, but she's going to do a little background on the research process. And this is actually the first time the board will adopt a research agenda, and that was actually Jessica's idea. So all credit goes to her. Jessica.
Thank you so much, Director Ross. Get a little bit closer. President Core, Vice President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and members. As Sean said, I'm very excited that we're going to think about a long-term research plan. This is really encouraged and supported by a lot of the data that we'll talk about that we get from the Department of Education. So it's aligning a little bit as well with the master data sharing agreement that we have and other partners. So first I'll start with just things you are all familiar with as you work in schools and in education. Is just the cycle of research. The research can take the form of what's working and what's not working, a needs assessment, and a status check. It is used to inform policy development and revision, support resource allocation, improve accountability, assess the effectiveness of the policies, and examine the trends over time. What we need to know to conduct research is the reason and purpose for the process. So as you're talking about the long-term outcomes, what is our goal here? How and when the results will be used. So when are we checking in on that data, as Member Myerson was saying, the regularity and frequency of checking in with that. What data is currently available and needs to be available. This has been a very big priority with the early literacy plans, is getting more data more frequently and the type of data that is usable for the research goals that we have. Also involved are sources from previous and ongoing research from our partners. And really the goal is to then communicate this out. Some of our partners here are the Department of Education, as I spoke about. They contain most of the quantitative information about students in Arizona. They also provide us with the background for the design and interpretation of research. So anytime we engage with research with them, we speak with the programmatic areas within that research area to learn about the administration of that area, what are the considerations of the data, and what is the use of the, once it's been analyzed, how would we interpret it? The board's committees are actually another resource that's utilized, especially with ADF accountability, as items are presented and reflected in that continuous process with the board. The board's community partners have been talked about here, Helios, Education Forward, school districts as well, and charters in private institutions too. Further, we do have national partners such as the Center for Assessment, Selwyn Ed, ECS, and others. One thing that we think about in that turning results into action is how can we disseminate research more effectively so it's not sitting on a shelf. That's a big concern whenever we do research. So research doesn't occur in a vacuum. It's situated in a community, and it's responsive to the community's needs. So first, it should start with what are those objectives, who are we trying to reach, what are the messages or call to action from the research, and how are we communicating engagement and application of findings. So sort of ongoing, connecting research through once it's begun to what the next step for that research is. We engage in some of these strategies, and that was discussed as a question earlier, what the stakeholder outreach looks like. This looks like some of our work groups, working with committees, presenting and engaging with Guppy Mac, AV Mac, and Rural Schools Association, groups like that. In the past, the board has also put out press releases on certain areas and made decisions, and sometimes that connects to the research as well. I'm going to give an update on sort of the current research. We are always ongoing evaluating ADF accountability. We recently have been released full access to all of that underlying data, so we have more of the student level data of accountability and not just the summaries of what goes into letter grades. But really looking at student mobility trends has been important, as well as those subgroups like special education, ELL, and low, high poverty students. We have an ongoing scope of work for disaggregating the student with disabilities assessment data, and this is to report on those 13 federal disability categories, as well as the placements that the student is in. Are they in the least restrictive environment? Mauer, that has been a very important conversation today and throughout the board's work. We are looking at more of a long-term evaluation of early literacy outcomes, as Vice President Haley spoke of earlier. The students who have been retained since that 2013 implementation and what is going on in their college matriculation. Are they dropping out of high school? What does proficiency look like for them throughout their academic career? With educator discipline, each year we are not required to, but we do provide a annual enforcement action report, and we expand this depending on the data that's available. So now we will have information on non-certificated educators and what the discipline looks like for them. So these were some of the research priorities from that survey of what was identified as how we want to continue forward. So as you can see with the post-graduation transition planning, that connects well to the college matriculation as discussed earlier, and then the CTE program outcomes and how that is interacting with the industry. From this list, are there any new research priorities you would like to add? And then what are the possible data points that you would really like to examine, especially with the areas like teacher recruitment and retention? I think it'd be very helpful to know in that area.
Thank you, Jessica. First of all, we're just thrilled to have your skill set on serving this group, and your work is extraordinary. So you see the bullet points there that came from the survey from this group where we asked, we'd be interested in some data around this. So your question to us right now, is there anything not captured here that members of the board would be interested in kind of putting on your radar in your research agenda? Yeah.
Absolutely, Dr. Kaur. One of the things is we haven't submitted yet that scope of work for Mauer. So if there's anything really specific that you wanted to look at for the outcomes with early literacy and what Mauer, what's been going on with students who have been retained or promoted for a good cause assumption, as well as I said, the teacher recruitment and retention, what type of data, since a lot of data has been presented on that yet.
So I will. Did you want to? Oh, okay. Then I'm going to go to member Katniss, please.
Thank you. I don't know if this is something that there is data available for this, or if this is something that we can look for. But we've seen a large number of teachers leave the profession. So what I'm actually more curious about for teacher recruitment and retention is maybe some like exit data. Why are people leaving the profession? What kind of, because I think that we've approved a large number of different teacher pathways, so it might be hard to see each individual program and what teacher is part of what program and why that program is necessarily working versus as a whole, why are teachers leaving? And so how can we kind of look at that and maybe find some possible solutions for that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Member Katniss. I think that's a great question. And even research that we can do qualitatively as well as partnering with the local education agencies on what type of exit survey they do for their educators.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Mr. President?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Member Kervikis.
First of all, I echo Member Katniss' comment and President's comment. Jessica, I'm so excited to have you on staff and that we're going to actually have our first research agenda. We always talk about, research-based decisions at the local level, and we're going to take it here. So I'm really excited. Thank you. I have a question to which I don't know if there's an answer, but something that I think about a lot when we're looking at our reading data, whether it's in the context of Mauer, letter grades. Let's just say a school has only 10% kids reading proficient at 3rd grade. I don't always know what that means. And I know the state assessment may not be able to give us this data, but I don't know if that means how far away are they from the mark? I don't know. I know we measure, I'm really familiar with how we do SGPs and SGTs, but I don't know how we can tell if they're actually making growth, like they went from the 3rd grade level to the 5th grade level. And especially when I think of the kids that were exempt, going to your original point. So they're exempt. Did they ever get there? Did they ever catch up? Did they ever get to grade level? And I'm sorry, I'm not articulating that question, but it seems like a really important data point that we don't have. I don't know if that's only data that they can get at the local level through formative and interim benchmarks, but just wanted to throw that out there because I feel like it's a missing piece, at least for me.
Thank you, Member Kervikis.
And Jessica, I guess I would ask the same question I asked of Director Ross about coordination on our legislative. I assume there's a high level of coordination between you, I was going to say your office, but you are your office, between you and Helios and ABOR and you know, all these other Education Forward Arizona that have a lot of research, that have a lot of data. So we share data, we share information, I suspect, I hope.
Yes, we are aware. There's only one data sharing agreement, that is with the department, but that could change. However, I think that we're in the vein of not duplicating what others are doing, but really adding on to it, filling any gaps of information that the board might need to take advantage of the levers that are available.
Thank you. Director Ross, were you going to jump in there with me?
Or Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Just that will apply that same umbrella from the strategic. So again, the goal is to have it all really well aligned. So Jessica, Aaron, the team and I will go back and take all of this feedback and craft it into sort of more concrete strategic, you know, draft, legislative draft, research draft, and bring those to you all to look at.
Very good. Any, Vice President Haley.
Just a comment, I think, and again, echoing my colleagues' comments about your work, Jessica, thank you so much. I know that we'll be hopefully getting information from Deputy Assistant Superintendent Bruce Duplanty on teacher prep programs. I think that the data that we get from that will, I think, help us or better inform the work that we're trying to do around teacher recruitment and retention. You know, his report that he did in June, I think, was incredibly informative of, you know, approximately half of those educators that are prepared in the state of Arizona, I think if I remember correctly, actually don't teach in Arizona. So we're producing a lot of educators, but they're not necessarily staying here. Perhaps it's because we have articulation agreements with other states, so they use us and then they go elsewhere. But I think that being able to use that information, I think will help us in this process of understanding where we want to go on the teacher recruitment and retention policy ideas. So if you also have other ideas of how to extract that information or how to interpret it in a way that could be meaningful in the rulemaking processes or how we hold educator prep programs accountable, or I think that can be very, very helpful. So
thank you, Vice President Haley.
Or Superintendent Horn, Vice President Haley. There's also some interesting pieces coming. The K-5 literacy endorsement has a requirement that educators pass an exam in order to get the endorsement, and we'll be able to look at passing rates for specific programs, ed prep programs. And then there is also, in the Move On When Reading rulemaking package that'll come back in September, a change to benchmark data being submitted by subgroup. So we'll actually also be able to see how schools are doing with specific populations. So there's some more disaggregated data on its way, which is exciting. Can I?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Please do.
Just to bring everything to a close, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you all so much.
I'm not hearing any objection from my colleagues, so you go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, may I add one more thing? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Member Kurbikis, please.
To Jessica's question about identifying some more research stuff. I think as a board, we've done a really good job, and quite frankly, the legislature as well, of putting the required components into the literacy plan that are right and make sense. But I think it's also incumbent on us and at the local level to start identifying the things that need to come out of the schools. In other words, identifying the non-research based practices that are still happening and need to be pulled out. Because I think we've done a really good job, and really all states have, of identifying what needs to be in. But I think we need to identify the things that need to be eliminated as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Director Ross.
Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, just want to thank everybody, Arizona Western College again, for a wonderful 2-day retreat. This was an incredible experience, a wonderful host, wonderful venue and support. Thank you, board members, for traveling. It's important. It's important for us to be present around the state, and I think we saw that by coming to UMaine, all the folks that joined yesterday morning. Thank you to the board staff who traveled and did a ton of work here and at home to get this ready. And then I also just want to, on a personal note, say thank you. This is month 7 for Aaron and I, and we are continually humbled by your faith in us, and very, very thankful that we have the privilege to do this work. And coming in, we had big shoes to fill, and we didn't know what that would be like. And you all have been incredibly supportive, incredibly kind with our learning curve. And we say it honestly on a daily basis, we're like, God, this board's awesome. So we're just really thankful for all of you as people and professionally. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Aaron, who is healing right now and does impeccable work, as the best partner in crime a person can hope for. So thank you all very, very much.
Well, fantastic. Wonderful words, Director Ross. So I would also like to extend my thanks for everyone to traveling here to Yuma. Obviously, we're very proud of the little bit of magic happening in Yuma, and I was happy to share it. Also want to recognize our 3 educational partners and supporters that we refuse to be worn down and stuck with us every minute of both days. So I appreciate your support and interest in what the board is doing, and certainly your partnership moving forward as we try to tackle these big goals. So, absolutely. Yeah, please. Janice, you want to start? Everyone can just kind of stand. Senior Vice President. And you want to introduce yourself? Yeah, sure, why not? A super important part of this community, so thank you for being this. But truly, thank you for your interest in your partnership, and we look forward to good work moving forward. So with that, I will adjourn us at 12:09 and wish everyone safe travels.